Russian soldiers going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. Історія до волновахи і чудо кличе діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО. Нам не треба ні конфлікту, ні війни. Та ми готові всіх вас слать до сатани. Тисячі вже полягло, і все більше шлепуйло. Тут для них нема нічого, крім труни. Going home, Russian soldiers going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. Історія до волновахи і чудо кличе діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО.
Вызволять пришел, братишка, ну привет! На моей земле тебе один ответ. Нашим людям с кирпичом, даже танки и бачок. Вам не взять нас и за 100 тысяч лет.
Going home, Russian soldiers going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. Історія до волновахи і чудо кличе діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО.
Mr. Putin, on behalf of all our guys, no one's scared of your nuclear device. You can take your top 11, shove it up your wrinkled butt. Oh, we'll come and help you fit it in your skull.
Going home, Russian soldiers going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. Історія до волновахи і чудо кличе діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО. Going home, Russian soldiers going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. Історія до волновахи і чудо кличе діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО.
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великой страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння, різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів. Робить примар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, та вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар. Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар. Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome back to day 127 of the news.
And of course, we are starting off a brand new week today on day 127, which is the beginning of the 19th week of the war. A load of people said at the very beginning of this war, 127 days ago, that Ukraine would not survive longer than 3 days. They have now survived 18 weeks, going on into the 19th week, and Ukraine is still here and still standing. It is an impressive feat just for them as a nation and for the entire world, as a large amount of countries have given support to Ukraine to help them to continue on. And without that support, Ukraine would be having a much harder time. And so a massive amount of support, both to the Ukrainian soldiers and the government, who's been doing an incredible job trying to manage the defensive positions of the Ukrainians around the country, and also all the countries and the people around the world who have been continuing to support Ukraine through actual actions and through their words. But with that, not only has there been words and actions tonight, but there has actually been results as well. The title, of course, says that the Russians were blown off Snake Island. And the truth is that the Russians were blown off Snake Island today, and Snake Island now has absolutely no Russian soldiers on the island. It is a massive victory for Ukraine, at least symbolically, and it's going to be something that is very interesting to cover here in a little bit, because we actually heard an official Russian statement that confirms that they have left the island by and large, and then they gave a totally different explanation for it than what we could see already going on. But with this in mind, the chapter of the Snake Island curse has finally been closed. Almost every single Russian object that was ever involved in the capture or the occupation of Snake Island, whether it was the Moskva, the flagship of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, all the way down to the Pantsir AA systems that were unloaded to the island, and even to the boats that just frequented the docks there occasionally just to check up on the island, almost every single thing the Russians sent to Snake Island wound up being destroyed. And now today, that curse is finally closed as the Russians ran tail-tucked from the island and back to the port of Sevastopol, leaving the island uncontested and technically back in Ukraine's hands. It is an absolutely phenomenal thing, and I am more than happy to report on that. And so let's go over the schedule, and I'm not even going to have to move, because this is actually going to be the first thing we cover tonight. We're actually going to be covering the entirety of Odessa, the Odessan coast, I guess you could say, and also Snake Island as well. All of these 4 pieces of news are kind of intertwined. After we cover these pieces of news, we're then going to be moving on up towards, well, actually past Kyiv, and we're then going to be moving into Russia, which is kind of weird because now we're also moving into Kaliningrad as well, where we heard some very odd things today on camera. And so we'll be looking at Kaliningrad as well as the interior of Russia and seeing what has been going on there. After we cover that news, we'll then be moving down to the location unknowns and the Kharkiv news. But before we get there, we're going to answer 3 questions from the chat. After we answer those 3 questions, we'll then move on to the location unknowns as well as the Kharkiv news. We'll also be covering the Balaklia news, which is something new. We've never actually covered that as a piece in its own segment, but we've had enough news today that the location unknowns, Kharkiv, and the Balaklia segment should make an even set. So once we cover all that news, we're going to start moving down into the Slovyansk to Bakhmut area, including Lysychansk as well. But before we get there, of course, we'll be answering another 3 questions from the chat. We'll then cover this news. We'll then cover the remainder of the news around the country, including the news that happened in Donetsk, also the news that occurred around Kherson and Mykolaiv. And after that, we'll then be moving into the United Kingdom, a country that my family hails from. Actually, I'm like 90% British, which my family's been in America for 200-something years, which is bizarre. But we'll, of course, be covering the British news. We have some very interesting news in a place I've actually driven past and seen in person. So we'll be covering that news then. And then we'll be going full circle and going back to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Zelenskyy. And that will signal the end of our news segment, and after that we'll then be moving on to the question segment for the rest of the night, and also answering history quizzes and map quizzes and all kinds of fun stuff during the question segment, just so that way everyone has something interesting to see. But with that, let's hang in here as we go to some of the biggest symbolic news of this war, and that's that the Ukrainians have retaken Snake Island. Here in this video, the Ukrainians made a montage of their efforts of striking Russian forces on the island and also retaking it. Remember the day, June 30th, as the day that the Russians finally lost one of the first things that they took in this war. Unfortunately, I won't be able to play the audio. We can see a Bayraktar right there, everyone's favorite. We can now see the coast, the marshy coast at that. This is the marshy coastline here that you can see on the map right over here. This is the exact same place. Very interesting, actually. And it's the closest to Snake Island. It's actually within artillery range. We can now see from a Bayraktar's camera Snake Island being hit. Actually, that appears to be a surface-to-air missile that was just fired off the island. And now we can see artillery hitting the island as smoke plumes are popping up, also in the sea, showing that the Ukrainians are trying to destroy the Russian forces there. The artillery still landing and on the mark, and the Russians have taken so many losses trying to hold what appears to be an insignificant island that they've now withdrawn. And you're seeing some of the video here that led them to decide that it was time for them to leave. It's a wonderful day. That's all I gotta say. It's a wonderful day because everyone martyred the dead soldiers at Snake Island. Not all of them died, around half of them were killed. But the ones that did die were martyred as heroes and patriots of Ukraine at the very onset of this war. And now they've finally been avenged as the Ukrainians have inflicted, we don't even know how many losses. If you count the Moskva into the picture, it's nearly 20 or 30, even 50 times or 60 times fold the amount of losses that were initially taken by the Ukrainians on Snake Island on the Russians. And now they finally withdraw from the island, making it technically back in Ukrainian hands. No Ukrainian forces have gone out to the island yet and planted the Ukrainian flag on it, but considering that it is Ukrainian territory and there is no Russian presence there, it is technically considered back into Ukrainian hands. A wonderful, impressive thing, and we also got more footage from the coast of the Ukrainian artillery firing towards Snake Island from there. Now, this appears to be something similar to a Caesar SPG, but I'm not entirely sure if it is. It does look like it has a little bit of a different cab. But we can see this SPG here firing towards the island. And oh boy, it's just great to know that this actually led to the Russians withdrawing from the island. But, of course, good news does have to be met with bad news. While the Ukrainians had a crushing symbolic victory here in the south, which is just phenomenal, the Russians, in their attempt to slink away from the island in defeat, decided to lash out against the city of Odessa. In the middle of the night, on the 29th of June, leading into the 30th of June, which is today, we saw that a Russian cruise missile slammed into an apartment block, killing around 7 people at the moment and wounding 9. We can see some of the footage directly after the aftermath, showing the calamity that occurred in the city of Odessa.
Мы с Андреем должны были ночевать, но оставили сегодня нам с родителей.
А вот
Это
бассейн.
новое бунгало, это был бассейн.
And there's the apartment building that was hit. And we also got a picture of the disaster as well, which I'll show y'all right here. Once again, incredibly unfortunate. And the number keeps on climbing as they're finding bodies inside of the apartment building as we speak. It's an incredibly unfortunate thing, and I hope that the Ukrainians make the Russians pay threefold for the amount of Ukrainian citizens, innocent civilians, that were killed in the middle of this apartment block in Odessa in their sleep. It's a very unfortunate thing, but it is, of course, overshadowed by the victory that the Ukrainians have had over the Russians symbolically at Snake Island. The Russians, as they've been talking, and I think it's very interesting to note what they said, is that they said, yes, we have withdrawn from Snake Island, and here comes the typical Russian spin. We withdrawn from Snake Island because we're actually trying to show a sign of goodwill and good faith to the West and let everyone know over there that we have the best intentions at heart, and we want humanitarian aid ships to enter Ukrainian ports, load up with grain, and make sure that those poor Middle Easterners and Africans don't starve, because we're actually very nice and generous people. And that's not true at all. Right now, the blockade does still stand. They did withdraw from Snake Island, which is near some of the major shipping ports out of Ukraine. But beyond that, they haven't actually done what they have said entirely at this point. And as of last week, they were saying, we will lift our blockade if y'all lift the sanctions. So this is not any kind of goodwill or humanitarian thing that they've done here. They're trying to spin it that way, but literally last week, they had no intentions or care in the world at all for all of the potential deaths that would be caused by famines around the world if Ukrainian grain couldn't make it out of the country. So I wanted to keep that in mind, and of course, typical Russian twist and spin like they usually try and do. But it appears that nothing is really going good for them inside of Russia right now anyways. If we move out of the Odessa and Snake Island area, where the incredible news was first heard, and we move into Russia, we can see that they're still living in the illusions of grandeur that they've had during the course of this entire war. Starting off, we can actually see that the Russians are still talking about going to war with the West in the middle of talking about their humanitarian efforts, and they're talking on TV about taking Lithuania within the course of 3 days. I'll actually have to read this to y'all, I believe, because most of the bottom text will be cut out, so I'll just read what this man is saying. Talks about the convoy through the Lithuanian territory mean the beginning of the operation for relieving of the Suwalki Gap. So, an offensive operation. By the way, the operational depth isn't big, just 60 kilometers. With good momentum, it will be 3 days of the offensive. 3 days to take 60 kilometers. We didn't even see the Russians take one city over the course of a month and a week, and they expect to actually face down the entirety of NATO and cut off this Suwalki Gap, which is right here. This is the town of Suwalki, where this gap is. And they plan to take this, which is actually in miles, some 40 miles wide, in the course of 3 days. These people live in raw delusions. If you take a look at what has actually been going on in Ukraine, the capture of Sevastopol in its own right from one end of the city to the other was a span of 3.6 miles. It took them a month and a week to cover that 3.6 miles, and in the end, the Ukrainians pretty much retreated from the remaining mile and a half of ground they had within the city over 2 days, which is how the Russians were able to claim 3.6 total miles instead of around 2. So they're just insane at this point. That's really all there is to say. There's no way that they could cover that kind of ground in 3 days. They can't even cover it against the Ukrainians, much less the Polish, the Baltic states as a combined alliance, and pretty much every other NATO country out there. So, with that, wish them the best of luck in trying that. I don't think it would succeed, But we also have some very interesting phone calls that came out of Russia today. And they were something that I had to cover, although I'd never cover phone calls on the stream. Of course, going to throw up the question of whether this is whether the validity is good or not. I'm not really one to put phone calls onto my streams because it's almost impossible to confirm whether they're real or not. But I did see an interesting one today where Russian officers are taking bribes to supposedly pull families' children from the front lines and send them home. And this seems somewhat typical to what we have heard before in Russian history after the Russian army was formed in 1991. This has kind of been typical for Russian officers to take bribes, all the way from the very lowest officer of a lieutenant, all the way up to the top as a general. And so, very questionable about the validity of phone calls. There is a historical precedent for this kind of thing. And so I made sure...
Enforcer, we're having an issue. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. It looks like we're having a DDoS right now. And it looks like... yes! We survived! We did it!
Oh, thank God.
Oh, thank God. Yes! Y'all don't know how happy I am about every time we survive a DDoS attack. It just happened again, and I'll explain why it's a DDoS real quick, just in case if no one knows why I'm always claiming they're a DDoS. Matthew and me are able to talk over Discord to each other perfectly fine, yet our stream will get slammed down. And so it's not an internet network issue. It is definitely some kind of a server issue where some server out there is being attacked. But thank God we made it through the third one. The enforcer is 3 and I think 3 right now with the bots, and we've managed to survive another DDoS attack, and this one was incredibly early in the stream. So glad y'all are all around for that. Y'all just saw it happen live, and y'all also saw the stream connectivity box down here in the bottom right corner where my mouse cursor is circling actually shows 0 on screen, which means it was throttled to 0, and then it popped right back up. Thank God the defenses we have installed is working well. So with that, we're actually going to move to the phone call I was just talking about the Russian officers taking bribes. Hopefully y'all can see the translation at the bottom, and here's the video.
Алло, ма?
Алло, ой, привет,
Ма,
сыночка,
привет.
привет, родненький.
Привет, ну что ты
Как
там
ты
есть?
там, родной?
Да, нормально. Ты ездила, скажи?
Да, я ездила, видела Юру и передала ему деньги для зама Гаспаряна. Гаспарян обещает за эти деньги перевести тебя в Перевальное. Наконец-то
Бля.
тебя оттуда заберут. Господи, я такая радая,
Я,
такая радая.
да нас утрое таких сидит, и ни хера хорошего вот этого не происходит, блин.
Как? Что ты говоришь такое? Как это?
Да, ничего, не меняют никого, отправляют в какую-то жопу. Там еще грохнут, блин.
Господи, Боже, ты что? Как же так? Такие деньги взяли, не может быть такого. Я не верю, не верю. Тебя переведут обязательно,
Да
сыночка, не
не-
говори так, тебя переведут.
Ни хера, да вон уже так спросили, блин.
Не
Блин, ну,
верю, тебя переведут, они последние
короче,
деньги забрали,
ладно,
ты
все,
что?
давай.
Сыночка.
Unfortunate video, and that was the end of it right there. And you could hear over the phone call that mother of that soldier pretty much gathered up all the money they could find to give to the officer of his unit and pay him in return to take their son off the front line and send him home. That boy just explained to his mom that there have been multiple soldiers that have gone through that very same thing, and none of them have been sent home. And so it's a very unfortunate thing, and we can see there that the corruption still exists, at least in that phone call, in the Russian military that we've known has been prevalent for quite some while, pretty much since the Russian Federation came into existence. So, of course, in typical fashion, a very sickening thing to really hear and see, and I hope that and I don't really usually wish Russian soldiers well, but considering that family right there has literally put out their neck on the line to try and get their kid home and is most likely bankrupt and destitute now, I hope that boy does survive and hopefully doesn't commit any war crimes, so that way he can go home to his family that just found out that the Russians don't really care about them or their son, or anyone for that matter. And I'm sure that the realization just came into their minds that the Russians aren't the good guys because they don't even care about their kids. With that, we're now going to be moving out of mainland Russia, and we're now going to be moving to the enclave that is Kaliningrad. Some of y'all may actually know a little bit of history about the Kaliningrad area. This is a remnant of East Prussia, which at one point was actually part of the German Empire, or Prussia, for example, hence why it's called East Prussia. At the end of World War II, this area, which also kind of extended down further, you can kind of see actually the remnants here in the province map. You can see the slightly dotted line, which actually outlines the southern part of East Prussia, and the Russians actually annexed this and made it a part of Russia at the end of World War II. It's remained that way since. Here in this video, we can actually hear these slight sounds of explosions in the background. We don't know what these explosions are being caused by. Some people have hypothesized that the Russians are having a war game in the area of Kaliningrad. We haven't gotten any reports of the Russians bombarding Lithuania directly, so we know that it's not the outbreak of war with NATO, but there are some kind of explosions occurring within Kaliningrad, and the source is unknown. So here's the video. You could hardly hear it. It was very, very hard for me to hear, and I bet it was much more difficult for everyone else to hear because I don't know what the audio levels are like on stream. But there was just the faintest sound of what seemed to be artillery explosions in the background. And so I'm assuming that it may be some kind of a military exercise, considering the war hasn't started. But very interesting that they're doing it in Kaliningrad, of course, since it just got blockaded. And also, because they're already, as far as we know, running low on supplies and having a logistical quagmire in Ukraine over the course of this war, yet they're going to spend the time and resources to run a war game in the blockaded Kaliningrad. Something interesting that I wanted to note. I hope y'all found that interesting as well. With that, we're now going to be moving out of the Russian news, and we're now going to be moving down to the location unknowns, the Kharkiv news, and also the Balaklia area news. But before we actually get there, we're going to take a quick pause to answer 3 questions from the chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right. So I know you all saw it earlier, and now it is time to address it. We had a $500 donation come in from the legend Naria, who says, Slava Ukraine, Hiram Slava, Slava Enforcer, and Slava Leaf Springs, and Slava Naria.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, Naria. And where have you been? You've been gone for a while, and I was always wondering on the Sunday fundraisers, where were you? Because everyone was looking forward to seeing you. But it's I'm glad to have you back. That's really cool. I always love when viewers who have gone away for a while come back. It's always great. So welcome back to the stream, Naria. And also, thank you so much for the kind words, of course, to our stream, to Matthew and me, and also to Ukraine as well, as that's what we've been covering here for the past 127 days, and we are going to continue covering it until this war is over. So I thank you so much once again, Naria, for the massive support. It helps out our channel greatly. Of course, you already know that, and we're greatly appreciative of it. And so, Slava Ukraini, and thank you once again for the support. And I hope to see you around for a Sunday fundraiser. But with that, we are on to the next question. And thank you so much again, Naria, for the support. Oh, what's this? I accidentally clicked something. Thank you so much for the support, Naria. I'm actually flinging around my finger, actually in real life, so that's why that happened. And I hope that does address the comment, and I hope that you stay around, and I hope you have a good time here again. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next question, and welcome back.
Yes, and thank you very much, Naria. That is very generous of you, and yes, welcome back. And up next, we have a $50 super chat from Robert Harrington, another one of our regulars, who says, keep up the great work. Cool sunglasses face, thumbs up, and Ukrainian flag.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, and we are going to try and keep up the good work as long as we can. We're actually looking into making a video again. I don't want to get anyone's hopes up because I have no idea when it's going to be released, but I'm trying to figure out a way to produce 4 videos a month if possible, about different things outside of the Ukraine war that people will find interesting. One thing I will say though is that we're kind of on the fence about doing the whole Browns Ferry power plant thing, because honestly, the whole point of doing that is because Enerhodar, the power plant there, was on everyone's minds, and so we were wanting to cover nuclear power in some kind of way, while it's still something that a lot of people are interested in, but that was months ago at this point, and so we're really considering whether that's something we'd want to cover or not. Just for y'all to know, the Browns Ferry power plant is actually right here if you want to find it on Google Maps. You can also just Google it as well. and it has a very questionable safety history. But we're going to continue to make sure that those summaries go up and these streams go up, and then we're also going to try and expand out in the background as well, and hopefully that will go well. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment, and thank you all once again for the support to this channel. And with that, we're going to be on to the final question of this segment.
And for the last one of the segment, we have a $50 super chat from Gary Robbins, another channel regular, who says, what can we do in the U.S. to support Ukraine?
What we can do in the United States to support Ukraine is actually kind of limited. Now, it's unfortunate to say that, but the truth is that there's not really a lot that a single citizen in the U.S. can do on their own to help out Ukraine. But as a group, like the Lee Spring Army, there is a lot that can be done as a whole group. The first thing that you can do is you can call up your local, well, not really local, but your federal representatives here in the United States. They could be your congressman, your senator. Reaching out to the president's pretty much pointless, but you could always try and reach out to the president. That's very hard to do, though. And you could always appeal to them that support should continue to be sent to Ukraine and in larger amounts to help them try and finish off this war. I actually saw something interesting today, and forgive me, everyone, it is sacrilege against the Enforcer channel, but I did happen to walk by the news, and it was running in my house, mainstream news, an absolute sin against humanity, but it was Fox News. And while I don't usually pick on one in particular, I heard one guy say something that was just particularly stupid today, and it was just pointless. The guy was talking about the West wants the war in Ukraine to go on forever. I don't know how that would be to our advantage. He didn't really explain that part. He just said it as a talking point. That's usually what most people do these days, is that they just say something and there's really no explanation or logic behind why that would be the case. And then he also said they're just trying to pump millions of dollars over there for no reason. And then he also said it was in the benefit of Russia, the way economics are for them now, which didn't make any sense at all. If you actually look at the Russian economy, it's falling apart. In fact, the ruble has skyrocketed in worth. It's in fact twice as valuable now as it was going into the war. And while a lot of people may think that's a good thing, that's actually a bad thing. That means that massive deflation is occurring, which means that the economy in Russia is shrinking like a star that's just gone supernova and is shrinking back down. That was a really nerdy thing to say, but still, point stands. And I just listened to this guy, and I was thinking, where is he coming up with any of this? Like, none of it made any sense when you actually know the situation that's going on. And of course, like mainstream news, you go to one side or the other. I'm not saying that, when I'm ratting on Fox here, I just wanted to be known. I'm not saying CNN is any better or MSNBC. I think they're all terrible, and they're in pretty much the same way. They all just do it a different way. They have different talking points. But golly, I mean, like, none of it made any sense at all. I just sat there and listened to it, and I was like, that's not at all the case. And then they said the oil prices are high because that's what Russia wants. But the problem is with that statement is that, speaking about the United States, now for the rest of the world, that may be true. But in particular for the United States, we get most of our oil from Canada, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq. Those are about the top 3 oil importers to the United States. And none of those 3 are called Russia. And so I don't know how they're benefiting off of high gas prices in the United States, because we're hardly buying any of their oil when you actually lay it all out on a spreadsheet and look at who we're importing oil from. But that brings us into a whole other thing about Iraq and Saudi Arabia being part of OPEC, which Russia is also a member of. But, that's a whole other topic for a whole other day. But still, the point stands is that what he was saying just made no sense at all when you actually look at it. And I gotta tell y'all, I mean, like, this isn't trying to keep y'all on my channel, but I highly suggest y'all never go into mainstream news. It's become nearly an idiot fest. It's just full of people who babble on nonsense. They don't know what they're talking about. You go on there and you listen to anything, especially anything political, and both sides have no idea what anything's about. They just run off their mouths what they think it is, and most of the time, just on the factual level, it's incredibly wrong. But with that, just wanted to cover that, and I thank you so much once again for the support, and I hope I have addressed the comment. And with that, we've reached the end of this question segment. We're now going to move on to the location unknowns, the Kharkiv area, and the Balaklia area, and I thank you all once again for the great questions and the massive support, as it does help our channel keep on going. And I would also as a bit of a special occasion tonight, want to thank Narya once again for the massive amount of support that they had put into the fundraisers. Of course, we used to joke weeks ago, before they went into the long sleep, I guess you could say, that they needed a statue of them made somewhere around the world. And now, I definitely have to say that I hope that we can continue to see that in the next fundraiser again. And also, thank you once again for the massive support tonight. That was incredibly generous, and we thank you so much. But with that, we're now going to be moving on to the location unknown news, Kharkiv and the Balaklia area. Starting off today, now I'm going to tell y'all in advance before I show this. I want to of course joke around a little bit, but on this one I want to make it very clear. This is fake. This was made in some kind of a computer simulation program, but it shows some kind of a Ukrainian buggy knocking out a Russian convoy somewhere, and I just wanted to show it to y'all because it was actually being thrown around a large amount today, and people were asking, was this real or was this fake? The answer is it's fake, but it's still an impressive work of computer, I guess you could say, animation. So with that, here's the video, and it is something wild.
Коротше, хуй знає, куди я заїхав. І є тут, що це у нас, орки, блядь, їбашать. Десь на Чорнобаївку, десь в ту сторону. Що це за хуйня, блядь? Йобаний! Ух ти що, сука. Чуть нахуй не вбили.
And I mean, I'm once again, I'm going to say this in the middle of the video. This is fake, but that's supposed to be a Lada, and I don't know what's on top of it. It looks like some kind of like a laser gun or something. I don't know. But golly, I mean, like if no one had told us this was fake, and this didn't look so outlandish, this could really pass as a real video. That's how good computer graphics have gotten. And I'm like really impressed actually. But anyways, I'm going to let the video continue.
Ух ти ж! Ну його нахуй, блядь! Ти шо? Ох, ти шо, блядь!
I mean, like, golly! I'm actually really impressed with whoever made this. This was a very big, this was a very big piece of work. Probably took multiple hours to make. But gosh, I'm blown away, really.
Да. Ну все, блядь, сходив, ну.
That's the end of the video. Of course, a fake one, but an impressive fake at that. I have to give credit to whoever made that again, because they are giving Pixar a run for their money, and they're the best in the business right now. With that, we're now going to be moving on to the actual location unknown news from the front lines today, and we only have 5 pieces of it. I'm happy to say that we had around 30 pieces of news, and only 5 of them were location unknowns. So starting off today, we've seen the TikTok superstars back in action, and look at this caption. Daring Chechen battalion operation along some train tracks. And I have to say, it's incredibly daring, especially when we see where this guy is aiming. We can see here in the video. Okay, good. It doesn't have like that Arabic music stuff on it, but we can see him firing the video, and he's aiming so low, he's firing into the train tracks right in front of him. What a hero. No return fire or anything, of course, just him laying down fire at train tracks. And of course, in the middle of the firefight, you have time to give a lecture like you're Spider-Man or something. What a fake video. It's so sad how the Chechens just make these things fake like that. Like, was it supposed to be him wiping out like 6 Ukrainians down the train tracks and then looking at the camera and going, remember, God is great. Like, what is, you know, it's fake. Anyways, we're going to just leave that at what it is at face value. And we're now going to move on to our next bit of location unknown news, where we see Ukrainian artillery hitting Russian cars and, of course, wiping them out. A testament to Ukrainian artillery accuracy that's continued to persist throughout the entirety of this war. We can now see them pointing out the Baza Urknativ. So we can, of course, see it just says orcs, orc vehicles, and then orc houses, I'm assuming. Now the artillery is coming down on the cars, and it looks like it just got the one in the rear and just missed the one up front. The one up front right now is counting its blessings, as it could have been the second one in the line that just got vaporized. You now see a second angle of that attack. And once again, we get a second view of the other car getting vaporized. So, great to see. And it's good to know that the Ukrainians, of course, are still taking out Russians. And it is, of course, another interesting thing to note that those two vehicles were civilian commandeered vehicles. We did not see a UAZ or any kind of supply truck there. So that may be suggesting, again, that the Russians are running out of logistics and military vehicles that they had entering the war, and they're now having to commandeer large amounts of civilian vehicles to just continue basic functions on the front. With that, we're now going to be moving on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see the Ukrainians almost get one. The Russians, of course, boasted about this, but it was just a miss by the skin of its teeth. The manpad was fired from the ground, which is an anti-air missile, towards this helicopter, and missed it by yards. The Ka-52 has some kind of a thermal imaging jamming system on board, if that's a good way to explain it, and it managed to just throw off this manpad by feet. Here's the video. You can see the manpad fly right under the helicopter, just missing it. Oh, man, the Ukrainians were really close with that one. We see it here in the second perspective. Oh, man. That Ukrainian crew has got to just be pissed right now. That was so close. It's no big deal if it never got close, but when it gets that close and almost hits them, you know they've got to be kind of a little aggravated about that. And you can see that the Russian helicopter pilots must have started having some brown in their pants as they started popping off flares right after it flew by the cockpit windshield. With that, that is the end of the video, and what a close call it was for sure. It's something impressive to see a manpad get that close to the helicopter but miss, and hopefully the next time the Ukrainians will be even luckier. Also, I'm going to be laying out a new rule here because every time I look over at the live chat, I see what almost appears to be advertising for other channels, and while I don't ever want to, of course, cause beef with other channels, at the same time, I don't like people who come into my stream and go, hey, this guy's just way better, and that's it. So from now on, we're not going to be allowing that kind of pretty much senseless plugging into our live chat, because honestly, it's kind of tasteless, and if you don't like us that much, then just go watch the other people. So with that, we're now going to be moving on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can then see a Ukrainian tank, actually a column of Ukrainian tanks racing for survival. This was actually included in the Enforcer summary today, and it was a very close call for these Ukrainians. They managed to make it out by the skin of their teeth, and it was very lucky to see that none of them got taken out. It was very close, though, for the third one in the convoy, as a shell will explode right near it right now. When this camera turns back again, you'll see the explosion just happen yards away. The Ukrainian tanks are barreling it across this field as fast as possible. And it is very important to note that moving targets are much more difficult for artillery to hit, and so it's just imperative right now that they continue to keep moving so that way the Russian artillery can't really hone in on them all too well. All three of these vehicles managed to survive the barrage, which was lucky for them, and they got to live another day. Wonderful to see, and I'm very glad to know that all of those vehicles, including the third one that almost got destroyed, made it out A-OK and kept on rolling at the end of the video. With that, we're now going to be moving on to our last bit of location unknown news, where we can see the Ukrainians have now made a homemade ATV. It looks a little crude, but it does look like it has some pretty decent off-roading capabilities, and so who am I to judge? Here's the video. I gotta say, for a homemade ATV, this is actually pretty impressive. Looks like it has a really decent chassis with suspension, but that, you know, body work, that's, you know, a little basic, but still, who cares? If it gets the job done, it gets the job done, and that's what counts. That's the end of the video, but a very interesting ATV. We don't know if those are being produced in large numbers, but we did see that one example, and if that does begin to be produced in large numbers, that will be very interesting to see how they will use them on the front lines. I don't know if they're going to use them as an ATGM carrier or some kind of a small MLRS. I'm not entirely sure, but I hope to see it on the front line soon and see what they're using it for, like all of the other ATVs. With that, we're now out of location unknown news, and we're going to move into the Kharkiv area, where tonight we've seen that a Russian prisoner has been taken. A prisoner exchange just occurred there yesterday, and now today we can see that the Ukrainians are taking more Russian prisoners to exchange for more Ukrainians. Here's the video.
Я Касимов Илья Снежинович, уроженец поселка Болезино, Удмуртской республики, родился 12 июля 1998 года. Проживал в Болезино, учился там же.
That's the end of the video, and a pretty interesting one at that. The Russian, as I got a translation before the stream, was actually talking about his name, where he was from, his rank, and what unit he was in before he was captured. So, you know, of course, the basic run-of-the-mill stuff, pretty much cataloging who he is, so that way, when they bring him to a prisoner of war camp or some kind of an internment camp, they will, of course, have an idea of who he was. With that, we're now going to be moving on to the next bit of news, which is actually out of the Kharkiv area. That was the only bit of news we got from there today, and we're now going to move down to the Balaklia area. And what did he do? We saw a video today of a Ukrainian soldier who has done something very dastardly, and he's taking the time to smoke a cigarette while he's standing in front of his work. Of course, that's what the Ukrainian soldier was joking about in the video. This is some kind of a ammo depot or an oil depot that got blown up in the background, and they're just joking about it on the front lines, of course, in high spirits. Here's the video.
Тель-Авив, блядь. Тебе говорили курить нехуй? Ты глянь в обратную сторону, что ты наробил, блядь. Бычок на позиции кинул.
Пизда, так то не я.
Та я рассказываю, а ну покажи, покажи, что в руках, а ну покажи, что в руках.
Моя, пакет не мій.
Ні?
Ні.
Бо там, де насрано, рядом бичок лежав і загорілося, блядь.
Йобаний в рот, що тепер буде? Пиздец, блядь.
Я думаю, пора ще раз йобнуть туди, хай догорають.
That's the end of the video, but I mean, like, what has he done? And they had some pretty good acting there. That guy was like, I don't know what I did, but it was something. This guy, honestly, could probably start running a comedy show after this whole thing, and if we know anything off of Ukrainian history, maybe he'll be poised to run for president as well. But pretty good, a little bit of comedy there. Of course, high spirits in the Ukrainian soldiers. And it's wonderful to know that they still continue to have a good sense of humor and a bit of a stoic nature about them when it actually comes to firefights, as the war has gone on for such a long time. With that, we're now going to be moving further down the line near Balaklia, where we can then see the 93rd hitting Russian units once more. This unit is actually called the Kolotny Yar, which is a very interesting name. Unfortunately, I don't remember the exact translation of what that means in English, but it is always cool to know the names of these Ukrainian brigades. You can see that they have some copyrighted music. The artillery is raining down from the 93rd. And Ukrainian artillery is, of course, the best in the world as far as we know right now. The accuracy is practically unmatched for the kind of artillery systems they're using, and a great testament to the Western doctrine that's been implemented there and the level of training that the usual Ukrainian contract soldier has gone through. They're now aiming a Toyota MLRS. We know that Toyota does make the best MLRSs in the world. They've been used by people all over from the 80s to now. Back then it was a Toyota Tacoma, though. They have become a little bit more fancy looking. I mean, you see them bombarding Russian positions further out in the distance. You see them firing a Mista B. You see some artillery shells that did not have their fuses in them. A very interesting little moment there, because you actually screw in the fuses before you fire them for the most part, although that's not always true. Sometimes they're just carried around with the fuses in them. We have seen a couple of examples of that. Whether that's safe or not, I don't really know. We can see a BM-21 of the Ukrainians now firing. And the 93rd is really levying a large amount of artillery fire on the Russians in the northern, well, actually near Balaklia. I was about to say the northern salient. I'm usually used to seeing artillery action occur in the northern salient, not in the Balaklia area, so this is a little bit of new news to me as well. When you see an M777, everyone's favorite, going to work. It seems that M777s are all over the front lines these days, and it is great to know that they are still putting them to work, and they're apparently hitting the Russians pretty hard, as they've never stopped giving them the limelight after they've arrived. We now see a Ukrainian soldier giving an interview. I'm going to... It says Lysychansk on it as well, I think. Yeah, it does. So I'm going to mute this. Actually, no, I won't. Let's see if we can unmute it here.
Не буде. У мене є одна знайома людина, вона завжди, яка відбувається якась халепа, якісь анекдоти там на роботі, вони кажуть, отут, трошки. Він стоїть і завжди робить висновок, каже, інакше не буде. От я вам відповім так само, інакше не буде. В будь-якому випадку ми переможемо. В будь-якому випадку. Коли це буде, я прогнозів давати не буду.
He got rudely interrupted near the end by a loud artillery blast, but of course that didn't faze him, and he continued to round out his answer to the interviewer's question. Great video, and I hope that the 93rd Brigade does continue on its great work in the Balaklia area, and that's able to keep the Russians at bay. As of the moment, we know that the Russians aren't pushing any more offensives in the Balaklia area, but with that in mind, if the Ukrainians don't continue to exert a small amount of pressure on the Russians there, the Russians may think that the Ukrainians are undermanned in that area and may try and push an offensive further into the country. With that, we're now going to be moving past Izium, as there is no news to report there today, and we're now going to move towards the Slavyansk area, where we've seen more evidence of Russian war crimes. Here we saw the Russians using incendiary devices, specifically white phosphorus, on the Ukrainian forces near the area of Slavyansk. Now, white phosphorus can be used in war. It is something that is a little bit difficult, though, when you look at the rules of war. You can use it against military personnel, but you have to prove that they were killed in the explosion of the white phosphorus and not from the subsequent burning. This, however, and the way it was dropped and exploded, is pretty much trickling down white phosphorus, I guess you could say particulates, onto the soldiers, and so obviously none of them are going to die from any kind of explosion. They're all going to get killed from burning, if any of them do die.
Салюты, ебать! Смотри, нахуй.
Это просто пизда.
Фу! Але красиво як, ёпти, блядь.
Новий рік, нахуй.
A very unfortunate video to see, and I hope that the Ukrainians do repay these war crimes with more offensives in the south and more captured Russian prisoners, and putting the Russians into a worser position. I also would like to make the note today that the news that we've been getting from around the country has been showing that Russia's moment in the sun, as it seemed, as the Russians were making a decent amount of progress here in the Lysychansk area, may have fizzled out today, as no progresses were made, and the Russians, of course, had to take a symbolic defeat at Snake Island. So with that in mind, I think that the Ukrainians' luck may be turning around, or this may just be a one-day occurrence, and by and large the Russians will still have a little bit of momentum left to continue to try and push the Ukrainians out of Lysychansk. We'll just have to see as the next days come by. With that, further behind the lines, we saw that the Ukrainians found a field repair site for Russian tanks that managed to survive their encounter on the front lines, and then they managed to destroy it. So here's the video. think the repair base is going to need a little bit of repairing. And I think that these vehicles that went in to be repaired are going to be coming out in worse condition. And I just don't think they're covered under warranty anymore. I just don't. That's like some aftermarket modifications to have a giant shrapnel hole in the side of your tank. And so sadly, I don't think any of these Russians are going to be in good shape when they finally come back to the mechanic shop and try and get their tank back. It looks like they won't be getting the keys for those. With that, we're now going to be moving down to the area of Lysychansk, where we've seen two other pieces of news from the city showing that the Ukrainians are still fighting tooth and nail for the town. First, we could see the 80th Brigade conducting a Stugna attack in the area of the city. And of course, it was a hit. Here's the video.
Знімаємо, але... Ну. Ну.
The Stugna is on its way. We can clearly see the side of this tank, which means that this tank is definitely going to blow up like a Roman candle. And they just hit it. They sounded like their team just made a goal in a soccer match or a football match for my European viewers.
Підараси, блядь! Красавчик, блядь! Дивись, сука! Ёбаный покемон! А, блядь!
You can just hear the energy in that room. It is ecstatic. It sounds almost like they just landed men on the moon. And for those men right there that are just mere men with an anti-tank missile launcher knocking out a $3.5 million tank, for them, that was almost like landing on the moon. And so great job for them. And of course, the excitedness in all of them can be felt greatly through the screen and in the video, because that was the probably most ecstatic shouting we've heard in a while from a Stugna hit. With that, we're going to be moving on to our second video from Lysychansk, where we've seen the infantry firing a small infantry mortar. Infantry mortars are usually some of the smallest in the field because they have to be carried by a normal infantry unit, and here we can see what appears to be a 40mm mortar being fired by one of the Ukrainian units. You know what's funny about the tiny mortars is that you don't even need a crew for them. One guy operates it pretty much. And so you can see this guy just flinging the little mortar rounds down the tube and they're firing off, and it's just like playing a little children's game because the mortar is so small. Just watch how he just deals with the whole thing. And then they're done. It's a great thing to have. It's wonderful to have. These things are very lightweight compared to a medium or heavy mortar, and so it adds a little bit of extra firepower to an infantry unit that they otherwise wouldn't have. And so it's wonderful to see this tiny little mortar, which we see so few of, putting in some work on the front lines and hopefully hitting those Russian units further down range wherever this thing was firing. With that, we have now covered all of the news from Lysychansk, and I'd also like to bring y'all's attention to how the markers have now shifted south, and they're not shifting north near Sevastopol. That's because the Russians, like predicted, are not going to be pushing across the Sevastopol River and onto the 400-foot hills that are on the other side. That's going to be pretty much impossible for the Russians, and so now the fight has begun to start from east to west instead of north to south, like a lot of people may have been anticipating. So, interesting note right there, and with that, we're now going to be moving on to our next bit of news in Popasna, where we see the 115th Brigade at work. Hopefully. Wait a minute. Hang on. That's the same... Oh, I duplicated the video. Sorry, everyone. That was actually supposed to be a different video, but sadly, I duplicated the link, and so for some reason, they got mixed up. So sorry about that, but with that, we're now going to be moving down to the Donetsk area as well as the Mykolaiv area, and then finally the international news and the speech from President Zelenskyy. But before we get there, we're going to answer another 3 questions from the chat, and after we answer those 3 questions, we'll then move on to cover the rest of the news for the night. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right. And before we get into our new super chats that have just come in, I want to quickly mention the poll that has been running. I asked, how do you determine if news is factual or not? And it looks like an overwhelming majority of you say that you cross-reference many sources, which I do believe is very wise. And that's actually what we do here on the Enforcer stream, because there is a lot of false news running around out there, and you have to sort of verify that what you're seeing is accurate. And it looks like 11% of you say that you don't believe any news. I can kind of see where you're coming from on that as well. It seems like everybody has an agenda these days, but and then 11% says none of the above applies to me. So very interesting poll there. Everybody has a wide variety of opinions when it comes to news. So very interesting. So first up from our super chats, we have a $45 donation from Praise Adonai, who says, Enforcer Matt, if I had one birthday wish, it would be for all watching to just donate $2. Your work in bringing the news is worth it. Ante-up, Leaf Springers, for the good of the channel. Destroy the hackers now and Slava Ukraine. And Praise Adonai, I'm not sure if it is your birthday or not. I couldn't really tell, but if it is, happy birthday.
And also, happy birthday to you as well, Praise Adonai, if it is your birthday. And thank you so much for the huge amount of support to our channel. It's helped us out a lot. And I understand the sentiments of wanting everyone to send in $2, but I would highly recommend that everyone saves their money for the Sunday night fundraiser. We are always appreciative of everyone's support on this channel, but if anyone was to ever ask me where would I want the money to go, I'm always going to say I would more like it to go to Ukraine through a fundraiser. But I do thank you very much for the support. And was there a question attached to that?
Let's see here. Let's see. I think it was mainly just encouragement, I think.
Well, regardless whether there was a question in there or not, I thank you so much once again for being one of our loyal soldiers in the Lee Spring Army. Praise Adonai, because it's always wonderful to know that there are so many people out there who support our channel, on top of also supporting Ukraine as well. Also, to speak about that poll a little bit before we move on to the next question, I do find it really interesting that a lot of people do cross-reference their sources. And I think that's a great thing. I think it shows that we have a very analytical group of people here that watch this stream. And sometimes y'all actually catch things that I got wrong, and then I'm able to correct it on the spot sometimes. And I'm very appreciative of our community for being smart-minded people who can actually look at things and understand them for what they are. And one thing I do is that I, of course, try and get my information straight from the source. So I never really have to try and cross-reference anything because it's usually just a video. And there's not really like you can cross-reference a real video versus a fake one. A video is a video. But one thing I do see a lot is that people will fall for things that just don't make any sense at all. You know, like you can say something like the Russian, and I'll just try and come up with something fake. If it coincides with something in real life, it's entirely a coincidence. But the Russians are trying to stop the grain exports because the Russians are actually found a way to make synthetic oils out of grain, and so their plan is to be greedy and make all of this oil out of the grain and then sell it to everyone at a really high price because that just benefits them. And people will just believe that without cross-referencing. Is there a way to make oil from grains and stuff like that? And I'm glad that a lot of people do cross-reference their stuff and don't really fall for things that seem illogical or dumb, because usually, by and large, you can spot something as being fake if you just have common sense. And I usually say that common sense is not believing the fantastical. And I know that's not a proper English word, but I do believe it kind of explains what I'm talking about here. There are people out there, especially a lot in the United States, that have completely dissociated from reality and what's possible. And a lot of people believe, and I'm sorry if you do believe this in the live chat, like any of my viewers, but a lot of people believe that there is somehow a way for all the leaders of the world, every single one of them, regardless of who they are, to all be united together into a little circle, and they all run everything behind the scenes and everything's planned out. I promise you that logically, I have tried to work with a group of 5 people before. It's nearly impossible to get 5 people to work together, much less politicians from around the world who are heavily invested into their own self-interests and what they're doing, and to try and get them all to work together towards things that may not be to their advantage. So that's one thing that I always dissuade people from doing, is just believing things that seem too far-fetched. Usually whenever anything is a overwhelming global conspiracy, that's usually incredibly far-fetched in my opinion, just because it's so hard to get people to work together. Why would you expect world leaders to all be working together in unison? But with that, I hope that does address the comment, and I thank you once again for the support, praise Adonai. And of course, it's always wonderful to hear such great things coming from you, and I hope that does address the poll as well, at least in a degree. But with that, we're on to the next question.
All right, and next up we have a $20 super chat. We actually have a couple here without comments, or actually just one. We have one from Scott Mensing. Thank you very much for that $20 donation, Scott, and thank you for being a longtime viewer. And then we have a $20 donation from Kaltenberg, who says, Slava Ukraine.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, and also, Slava Ukraini. I think a lot of people just send that in now, so that way they'll hear me say it like Zelenskyy. So just in case if that was the reason, Slava Ukraini. And with that, thank you once again for the support, and we're going to move on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to move on to the rest of the news for the night.
All right, and the last one of this segment goes to Jose Diaz, who puts in a $20 donation and says, Puerto Rico loves the enforcer and enforcer Matt. Goodwill gesture from Russia after got pummeled in Snake Island. Same adder got crushed in Kyiv. Hopefully another goodwill gesture after defeat Donbass and Crimea.
Well, I thank you so much for the support. It's always good to hear that the Puerto Ricans are with the enforcer. I think that's, yeah, I think you started off all of your super chats or ended them with Puerto Rico is with the enforcer, and I think that's honestly really cool, and I like the sentiments. But I do thank you so much for the support, and I do agree that hopefully the Russians do get crushed everywhere. Just in case if you didn't know, Matthew, an adder is actually a poisonous British snake from the British Isles. Of course, Ireland doesn't have snakes, though. St. Patrick expelled all of those in the 800s, I believe. But in England itself, they do have snakes. Also, members of Parliament are usually amongst them. But not getting political or anything. But I'm just going to say this. Taking jabs at politicians is kind of a pastime of mine, and I don't care who they are. If you've ever watched the show Spitting Image, which is a British puppet show on British television that ran in the 80s and is also running these days, they take jabs at I think pretty much everyone that you could possibly take a jab at in the political sphere, and I just find those kinds of jokes really funny, on just being honest. But with that, I hope that does address the comment, and I thank you once again for the support, and I am with Puerto Rico. And with that, we're now going to move on down to the Donetsk area. The rest of the Southern Front news, which will include Kherson and Mykolaiv, will then be moving on into Britain and then going back to Ukraine for the speech from President Zelenskyy. Starting off further down in the Donetsk region, we have seen some vehicle action from the Russians and the Donetsk Republic. First, we can see a Tor firing at a Ukrainian drone. And here's the video. We can see the Tor firing off its missile, and now it's on way to hit the Ukrainian drone. And it hit. There's really no way to go about that in the video. It's probably not faked. They probably did hit a Ukrainian drone. But considering that they probably spent $200,000 on that missile to knock out a $20,000, maybe even a $2,000 drone, I think the loss was not really equivalent. So regardless whether the Ukrainian drone was shot down or not, great to see the Russians wasting expensive ammunition on shooting down such a small drone. With that, we're now going to be moving to the front lines where we have seen the DPR committing a little bit of action today as they fire at the Ukrainians with their tanks. And I love how the title says, using the tank carousel tactic, which is something that we've seen the Russians do a pretty decent bit. And honestly, it makes no sense to me. Here's the video. You see them firing over and over and over. I love how it's called the tank carousel tactic, but we haven't seen this tank move since the start of the video. Has anyone noticed that rather than me? We don't even see Ukrainian forces down there or any indication that they're there. It's like it's just firing at an empty hillside. kind of a lame video, honestly. They're trying to make it seem cool, of course, but nothing really cool about this. It's really an embarrassment. With that, we're now going to be moving on out of the Donetsk region, as there's nothing further to report. Rather than this video, we don't have any idea of what the activity is looking like there, where the Ukrainians are being pushed back, or if the DPR is being pushed back. We did know the Ukrainians made an advance almost a week and a half ago at this point. It seems like they haven't made it any further, meaning to the front. It's like we're being DDoSed a second time. Let's see if the stream comes back up. And the stream is coming back up. They can't win. It's the 4th time we've survived a DDoS attack. You still there, Matthew?
You cut out there for a second. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can. It says the stream's in excellent condition, and also shows on OBS the stream should be in good condition. And so we're going to see if everyone can hear us still.
It looks like most people are saying that they're still here, so that's a good sign.
Yes! That is the second one this stream that we have survived, and the 4th one total. And so what we've done has really helped us out. We may eventually disclose what we have done to improve our security, but man, oh man, is it good. I'm so happy that we were able to survive these so well now. And I know that the DDoS attackers must be seething, whoever they are, wherever they are, that we've just managed to survive the second one for the night, and we haven't gone down yet. And I hope you're as excited about that as me, Matthew, because honestly, my excitement every time that happens and we survive is through the roof, man. So
yes, I'm very glad that's working. I just saw somebody in the chat say they want to know what software we're using, and I will say that maybe one day we'll let you know, but we have to sort of take into consideration we don't want to expose what we're doing, so that way the bots don't get an advantage either. So we'll have to think about it.
We'll, of course, be covering that maybe in the future, but for now, while we still have this advantage and they haven't figured out what we've done yet, we are going to try and keep it secret for as long as possible. But with that, like I was saying before we were so rudely interrupted, there has been no activity across the length of the southern front. It seems like the Russians and the Ukrainians have largely ceased any kind of activities here whatsoever, and so we get very little news from this area of any kind of activity, even activity that can be considered static. We'll now be moving beyond the Zaporizhia area of the front and moving on to Kherson, where we've gotten 2 bits of news today. And starting off, we've seen another prisoner of war exchange occur today, much smaller in scale than the one that occurred near Kharkiv, but apparently 15 Russians were exchanged for 17 Ukrainians, 16 soldiers, and 1 citizen.
На зв'язок. Радіостанція включи погромче.
Так точно, на повний гром. Шановні наші побратими, на виконання завдання президента України.
Координаційний штаб з Службою безпеки України і патрульною поліцією.
Вітаємо вас з Днем Конституції України.
На нашій українській землі. Слава Україні!
Героям слава! Героям слава! Героям слава!
Главное, що вдома, слава Богу. 10 мая. 10 мая.
З поверненням вас.
Де ви стояли,
з якої точки, де ви служили? Я рідна сестра Сергія Волинського, морського піхотинця. Сьогодні мені пощасливилось бути присутньою на обміні. Це неймовірні просто емоції. Дуже приємно бачити очі хлопців. Ми дуже вдячні координаційному штабу і головному управлінню розвідки за їх роботу. Ми сподіваємося, що далі результати будуть ще більшими і ще кращими. І впевнені, що важка робота буде вестись доти, доки кожен герой не повернеться додому.
5 хлопців поранені, але зараз там їхньому життю нічого не заважає, все добре.
Як взагалі відбувається це місто?
Це на самом деле воно складно происходит, и постоянно є ризики, що воно сорветься.
Мы сейчас находимся близко к передовой, я правильно понимаю?
Абсолютно вірно. Так що є пропозиція всіх привітати з Днем Конституції України та трошки поміняти, змінити локацію.
With that, that's the end of the video, and it's great to see that the Ukrainians did get some of their soldiers back, and hopefully they'll be able to settle into a comfortable retirement at home and tell their grandchildren about the stories of how they served Ukraine in the war and how they helped to defend their country. With that, we're now going to be moving on to the next bit of news from the Kherson area, which this man sounds about as excited as me when we survive a DDoS attack. I'd also like to address one thing. We're going to keep the name of the viewer unknown, but I did see someone say don't mention the bots because that encourages them to keep on doing what they're doing, and specifically the DDoS hackers. And to respond to that comment, at this point, I'm so confident about our security here on this channel as it's survived 4 DDoS attacks. Now, I dare the DDoSers to try and take down the stream. Now, it seems like it's almost impregnable right now. And in the words of Mike Tyson, my defense is impenetrable. My defenses are impregnable. I just bet them to stop me. You know, I'm going to take that children, I'm going to rip the guts out, something like that. But the kids part, not really. I'm not into that. You know, Mike Tyson was a beast back in the day. A little bit crazy at that as well. But now we're going to move on to this this Ukrainian cheering and very excited sounding over this destroyed T-72B3 that they knocked out near Kherson. Here's the video.
Пидорасы все горячие, сука, дымит залупа ебана. Вот так вам гандоны орки ебани. Иваныч!
What a video. This guy was excited. Now, he probably was the guy who knocked out the tank, probably, although we're not really sure. But that man was about as hyped up as knocking out that tank as I am for surviving the 4th DDoS attack. And so with that, great news for sure. And right now, we don't know of any large offensive actions that we were able to confirm on video today. But we do know that the Ukrainians are still pushing a counterattack near the Kherson area, and they are only 5 miles away from the city. In fact, they are so close that the city itself is within sight of the current front lines. So hopefully those front lines do close the distance, and we'll eventually see Ukrainian soldiers pushing the Russians out through the streets. And with that, we're now going to move behind the lines to Mykolaiv, where we've seen reporters come under fire today as Russian artillery appears to have found the general area, not the mark, but the general area that Ukrainians may be in. Rounds are coming in around them, and incredibly close as we did hear that whistle in.
Твою мать!
That's the end of the video, but luckily we didn't see any Ukrainian soldiers get wounded or killed in the course of it, and so hopefully all of them managed to survive the barrage. With that, we're now going to be moving out of the country. If you want to know what these markers were and you joined after they were covered, we covered these at the very beginning of the news segment tonight. So make sure to check that out because we did cover the news of the Ukrainians taking Snake Island and the Russian withdrawal from it. We're now going to be moving across the sea, well, really across the channel, honestly, to Britain, where we've heard 2 great things today. Starting off, we heard that the British are going to provide another $1 billion in support. I believe it may have been £1 billion, which is really equivalent to around 1.3 billion, I believe. But still a massive amount of support. And a great thing is Ukraine always desperately needs more military support. And this entire $1 billion package is going to be nothing but military support. So great thing to hear. And I hope that that does continue to carry on. And also, speaking of the place that I was talking about early on the stream, I have actually gone to Stonehenge, and I hate to put it down to a lot of people who may have high hopes of Stonehenge. It was honestly the most disappointing thing I had seen in real life. There was a lot more impressive things to see in Britain. Britain has many amazing things to see. For example, Blenheim Palace, for one. Skip Buckingham. The lines and the queues there are incredibly long. You can go to Blenheim, which is much quicker to go to, and is in fact larger and I think more impressive. It's also the home of Winston Churchill. There's a whole bunch of impressive things to see, of course, in London and all around the country, honestly. Britain is full of amazing things, but I feel like Stonehenge is one of the few things that I was well, actually, it's the only thing I was disappointed by. It's incredibly small compared to what you would think. But with that, we're going to be moving on to the news that occurred right north of Stonehenge. And a lot of y'all may not know this, but this area right here north of Stonehenge is called the Salisbury Plain. And the Salisbury Plain is one of the artillery ranges for the British Army inside of Britain. That's also another thing that a lot of people don't know, is that the British Army is not called the Royal Army, it's been called the British Army. The Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force do exist, but for some reason that naming precedent does not extend over to the Army, and it's not called the Royal Army, it's called the British Army. Interesting little bit of information there. But we can see that the British Army is training Ukrainian troops how to level Russians with an L119, which is one of Britain's medium artillery pieces, I guess you could say. And so, here's the video.
Ukrainian forces pound enemy positions to hold their lines and counterattack. But this isn't real yet. It's a training exercise in Salisbury in southern England, carried out by Kiwi military instructors from Palmerston North. The L119 is a lightweight howitzer that fires high explosive shells in excess of 10 kilometres. It's an old piece of equipment still used by our army and soon to be used in eastern Ukraine to help counter Russia's overwhelming artillery firepower in a grinding war of attrition.
They're designed to engage vehicles and dug-in troops, so a little bit of damage.
With the help of interpreters, up to 30 Kiwi personnel have spent a month upskilling and putting Ukrainian troops, the ones in black vests, through their paces on how to use the light guns. Their older style dial sights and ammunition provided by New Zealand. Confidence, concentration, coordination and command skills essential on the battlefield as members of the British Army watch on.
Their knowledge of this gun, that you do have this gun in your army, so they have absolutely been pivotal in the delivery, and the professionalism is superb.
But it's a two-way street. Our Kiwi troops are also learning from Ukraine's armed forces.
They've got a lot of experience in artillery. They don't really talk about the details, but they've shown a lot of commitment, something we can take away and use it at home.
A small but significant role for New Zealand in a critical conflict.
With that, that's the end of the video. And I also like to give credit to this channel, Reverse and Release, that put out this news segment today. And I believe the news segment, I can't really tell who it was made by. I don't know if it was made by them. I feel like it was made by a larger news network. But for once, I actually included something from a bigger news network because it did seem like it was very good information. And of course, it was showing video of the Ukrainian units training on the L119s near the Salisbury Plain. So great to see, and I hope that we see those L119s on the front line very soon, because if I do recall correctly, the L119 Falklands, let me see if I'm correct in my assumption here, the L118 was apparently used in the Falklands. It's pretty much identical to the L119, but this artillery piece stuck in my head because as a kid I remember reading a lot about the war in the Falklands, and I always found it incredibly interesting. Of course, the Battle of Port Stanley, how the Gurkhas took, I forgot the ridge, but I remember, of course, always thinking that the Gurkhas were incredibly cool, and they really are. They're a neat military unit, interesting history, and you actually have to be from Nepal to serve in the unit, so it's a really, really cool thing, and I honestly have a lot of respect for them. But of course, I remember hearing and seeing a lot of the L118s. Now it appears that they're L119s, and I have a place in my mind about these artillery pieces. So I guess you could say their ancestor was used in the Falklands War, and now we see the modern version of that gun being used on the Salisbury Plain, and Ukrainian soldiers being trained on them. Hopefully they'll make their way back to Ukraine soon, but with that, we have to make our way back to Ukraine for the night to make sure to go all the way back to Ukraine, a full round trip back to where we started near the very beginning of the stream in the city of Kyiv, as we now listen to the speech from President Zelenskyy.
Українці, українки, всі наші захисники і захисниці. Безперечно, головне слово сьогодні – Зміїний. Мабуть, так само багато говорили про Зміїний тільки у той день, коли туди прибув російський корабель. Потім і корабель відбув назавжди, а тепер і острів знову вільний. Вдячен я Головному управлінню розвідки, бійцям Альфи, вдячний нашим артилерістам, пілотам армійської авіації та повітряних сил, командуванню Олександрія. Острів Зміїний – це стратегічний пункт, і це значно змінює ситуацію в Чорному морі. Це ще не гарантує безпеку, Це ще не гарантує, що ворог не повернеться, але це вже значно обмежує дії окупантів. Крок за кроком ми витиснемо їх з нашого моря, з нашої землі, з нашого неба. Ситуація на Донбасі залишається найбільш жорсткою, надзвичайно тяжкою. Вогнева перевага окупантів досі дуже відчувається. Вони дістали вже просто все зі своїх запасів, щоб бити по нам. По Луганщині, по Донеччині. Я вдячний кожному і кожній, хто захищає наші позиції в таких умовах. Це справжній героїзм. Сполучені Штати оголосили сьогодні про новий пакет підтримки для України, передусім оборонної. Я вдячний президенту Байдену за цю допомогу. Вже скоро вона піде на передову і працюватиме на Україну, на захист свободи. Говорив про оборонну підтримку з федеральним президентом Німеччини, подякував за ту допомогу, яка вже надана, ще раз підкреслив наші пріоритети, якої зброї ми потребуємо. Президент Штайнмайєр висловив співчуття у зв'язку з нелюдською атакою на Кременчук та інші наші міста. Сьогодні відбувся ще один значний крок у нашому зближенні з Європейським Союзом. Україна почала суттєвий експорт електрики на територію ЄС в Румунію. І це тільки перший етап. Ми готуємось нарощувати постачання. За рахунок української електрики може бути заміщена суттєва частина російського газу, який споживають європейці. Тобто це питання не просто експортної виручки для нас, це питання безпеки для всієї Європи. Хочу нагадати, що приєднання нашої країни до загальної енергосистеми ЄС відбулось вже після початку війни. Україна робить речі, які здавалися неможливими. Сильнішою за цей час починається головування Чехії. Я вдячний нашим чеським партнерам за те, що серед пріоритетів свого головування вони визначили відбудову України. Дійсно важливо почати відбудову якнайшвидше на тій території, яка вже звільнена. А наш пріоритет – це буде завданням для усіх представників держави. Якнайшвидше має бути виконано все, щоб підготувати початок переговорів щодо членства. Урядовці, депутати, дипломати – всі мають працювати щодо цього 24 години на добу, 7 днів на тиждень. До речі, завтра будуть новини з цієї теми. Українську євроінтеграцію не зупинити. Вічна слава усім, хто захищає державу. Вічна пам'ять кожній, хто віддав своє життя за нашу з вами свободу. Свободу України. Слава Україні!
With that is the end of the speech from President Zelenskyy, and I just noticed, I didn't want to interrupt his speech, but it appears that we may have had another DDoS attack on the stream, the 5th one. I unfortunately couldn't see the stream throttle itself to 0, but it does look like on my end on the YouTube studio, I could see the telltale signs that it must have happened. I don't know if you saw that as well, Matthew, but I think we may have just survived the 5th DDoS.
Yeah, the bots apparently hate it when President Zelenskyy comes on.
Yes! Okay, so with that in mind, that may have been the 5th DDoS and the 3rd one on this stream, and we survived it again. So, everyone was sitting there, I saw a lot of people in the live chat saying, don't challenge the bots, they will win eventually, and it looks like for now they're going to keep losing. So I hope they keep seething and coping over there, because there's absolutely nothing they can do now to bring the stream down as of this moment. But with that, that is the end of the news for today, and that is the end of President Zelensky's speech. I thank you all so much once again for watching the news segment. We're going to be moving into the question segment here, and we're also going to be doing something new that we've been doing for the past 2 or 3 nights. We'll be pulling up map quizzes, and we'll be filling out map quizzes from around the world. So I hope y'all enjoy this, because I've been doing this for 3 nights. And if you would like to run a poll on that, Matthew, I would like to see if people do enjoy these little map quizzes that are done. I may have to move on to a different website, though, to try and find something a little bit new. But with that, we're going to move on to the questions.
All right, and first up from the super chats, we have a $20 donation from Makara, who says, I have been quiet for a while, but know that it is always darkest before the dawn. Got some very unconfirmed rumblings that Belarus might be mobilizing, not to attack Ukraine, but to defend against the Ruskies if the war goes south.
Well, I mean, I'm not really sure about that kind of news. I haven't heard much about that, but I wouldn't doubt it too much because, one, the chance that the Russians may invade Belarus or annex it at least is something that's always been on the table, and it's something that seems to be on Lukashenko's mind often. He actually told the public in Belarus, if I don't win, Putin's going to come in here and invade our country. And he kind of said that in very plain terms, which does show that he even believes that Belarus, in the way it exists right now, may just be propped up by the Russians. And then if they wanted to, they could just roll in and end it all. So in that regard, I think that may be true, but we don't have any actual verifiable news to show that that is the case. But I do thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does address the comment. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question, and I've started off this quiz very well. With that, we're on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $20 super chat from Jay Bagwell, who says, DDoS like a boss. And then he says in parentheses, pronounce DDoS like a bouse. So let me start over. DDoS like a bouse. Congrats on foiling the constant cyber attacks.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, and I also thank you for congratulating us on surviving what may have been the third DDoS attack of the night. It's so bizarre to me, honestly, that we've managed to survive 3 of them now on this one stream. And I know that a lot of people hate hearing about the DDoS attacks, and I know that some people just find them annoying, but y'all don't understand that on our end, from an actual administrative standpoint of running these streams, those things are a massive headache for us. When these things get shut down, they're the biggest thing of the night. And I also heard someone say, and I of course deleted their comment and removed them from ever speaking again, but I heard one person say, this is terrible. I've never heard a television reporter talk about DDoS attacks, and I was like, well, that's a good point. That's because they never have to worry about that stuff. These news reporters on TV for like a mainstream news channel or whatever, they never have to worry about connectivity issues because they're not running a live stream. They're on cable television, and so connectivity issues almost never happen, and if they do, it's not for their entire network or their entire show being seen around the world. So I was like, that's a great point, but that's really stupid to think in that way because that's not even comparable. We're not a news network, we're a stream. So with that, of course, it was wonderful to survive another one, and I thank you so much for the kind words and support, as it does mean a lot to me and Matthew that we've been able to get through them, and a lot of people are still cheering us on and backing us up. With that, I'm going to move on to the next question, but thank you once again, and I'm having a hard time figuring out where Perth would be. I feel like it would be... Oh, man, it was right there. Anyways, we're on to the next question.
All right, and up next we have a $20 super chat from Martin Haig, who says, Enforcer, in the video with the KA-52 copter near hit, no proximity fusing, question mark. Is it a British Starstreak missile, question mark, or faulty fusing?
The missile, we're not particularly sure what kind of missile it was. It's really hard to tell because all we can see is a smoke trail. But it didn't have a proximity fuse, and it did fly low enough below the helicopter that even if it did have a proximity fuse, it most likely wasn't going to explode. As far as I can tell, most manpad-fired missiles are impact missiles, so they have to hit onto the plane to explode. At least that's what we see on film, although what we see on film in that regard happens so fast, it's really hard to tell if it is a proximity fuse or not. But by and large, I think that it most likely was not a proximity fuse. And then on top of that, I can't really answer what kind of missile it is because I would just really be playing the guessing game on seeing if I could get it correct. But with that, I hope that does answer the question, and I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one, and Plymouth is down here. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And next up, we have a whopping $300 donation from Steve2848. Steve! So Steve says, I feel like you need to make a stamp. Russian bots go, something. I wish I could think of something clever to end that with.
Well, I know where you're going with that, Steve. It's something that's been in the back of my head as a merchandise run, but, you know, it's kind of like the logistics of actually making this, is an enforcer, you know, like the one you see on the logo, in full kit, like he is in the picture, with a gun with a bayonet, and he's stabbing some kind of a glitching Russian bot. It's like all glitchy looking and stuff, and making that some kind of a merchandise item, or making I Survived Day 116 a merchandise item, because if y'all remember, Day 116 is where we had to run 5 streams, one after the other, because we kept on getting DDoSed that much that night. Now we're surviving through it, so we kind of got through the hard times, but I have been thinking about doing something to commemorate those moments in our channel's history, because this has been like the hardest week for us ever before this, and now we finally been able to get everything under control. In fact, smack the bots around a little bit, and it looks like we're having the good times right now. Hopefully it keeps up. So in that regard, I thank you so much once again for the support, and we are thinking about coming up with something that does talk about the bots, at least on merchandise. I wonder if y'all think that's a cool idea, because I will actually go to a Fiverr artist, although Fiverr is a very questionable area to go. Sometimes you get good work, sometimes you get piss poor work, but hopefully we can get something out that looks really cool, because that's something that's been in the back of my head. But with that, we're going to move on to the next question. If I'm correct, I hope I don't piss off my Scottish viewers, Dundee is not this one. I think that's Aberdeen. I think Dundee is either this one. Nope, that's Glasgow. Then it must be... No, it's not that one. Okay, then it is that one. I was right the first time. So with that, we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $17 super chat from Killer3000 AD, who does not leave a comment, but thank you very much, Killa, for your donation. We appreciate it very much. And we are moving on to our next super chat, which is from Duina Campine. And I feel like I'm not pronouncing that correctly, so please correct me if I am incorrect. And they put in a $17 donation and say, 4.6 thousand watching, but only 1.6 thousand likes. Did you forget to click the like button?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, I wish people would really slam that like button. Like, I wish people would make a habit that when they got on these streams, they'd hit the like button, because y'all don't know how much that really helps out our channel, because YouTube works off of how many likes we get. And so if you really like what you're watching and you never comment or anything in the live chat or anything like that, or really do anything rather than get on here and watch, I beg of you to please hit the like button, because you do not know how much that helps us out to reach more people and grow. And then the larger we're able to grow, the more we're able to cement ourselves as an actual pillar in the news community on YouTube. And then if we get large enough, and this is way down the road, but if we were able to get large enough where we had like 40 million subscribers or something like that, we would be big enough to contend with the mainstream news networks out there, because surprisingly, CNN only gets 500,000 viewers per day according to the ratings. I believe that's correct. But with that, I hope that does address the comment, and I do entirely agree as well. And with that, we are on to the next question. And also, please make sure to hit the like button, everyone, because I'm telling y'all, it helps us out a great deal. With that, we're on... Oh, well, wait a minute. I'm going to back off of this one. I honestly have no idea where Russian cities are beyond the western ones. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And yes, please smack that like button if you haven't already, and thank you to everyone who already has. And up next, we have a $13 super chat from Duncan VR, who says, General Lunchtime said to the Ukrainian horseman, "We saw him yesterday." And then he said, "I want to make horse burgers from you." Mr. Horseman said, Matthew trying to imitate a horse sound saying no. Slav Ukraine. Yeah, Don.
Well, thank you so much for the support. And that was really funny, making Matthew make all those crazy noises. It's always funny to hear him do that kind of stuff. And so I highly recommend that everyone keeps on making him do that, because it's just funny to hear. But I do thank you once again for the support. And also another question that I'd like to ask everyone before we move on to the next question is that I feel like we may have done the maps through. There's only so many maps and so many quizzes I could do. And while a lot of people do think I'm highly knowledgeable, I don't know UK counties. I don't know Irish counties or German federal districts and such things like that. And so it's really hard for me to fill out a lot of these quizzes, because while I do know a decent amount about each country, I don't know that much about them. So if y'all would like, I would be willing to maybe play a game during the question segment but that's only if everyone's willing for me to do that. And of course, I'm going to try and make it a game like Ostriv or something like that, that may be a little bit more interesting for y'all to watch. So if Matthew, if you could put up a poll for that, if people like the quizzes or if they'd like me to move on to games, we'll see what they give as an answer. And if they like the idea of moving on to games, we'll come up with one here, or we may start doing that tomorrow. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next question after Matthew puts that poll up. And so we'll just wait.
All right, and there we go. That poll should be popping up here any second, so please be sure to give that a click. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from David Bacco, or Baco, I'm not sure how it's said. David, please let me know in the live chat. And he says, Enforcer Matt, you guys are awesome. Death to the bots. Slava Ukraine, hit the like button, you guys, and yeehaw!
And I thank you so much for the support, and I thank you so much for saying death to the bots. Well, you know, I don't know how I feel about that, honestly, when I'm thinking about it, but I can 100% agree that the bots are not good people. And I thank you so much for supporting this channel and everything we continue to try and do, and how we continue to fight this war against the bots, and now we are winning. And so, thank you once again. I hope that does address the question, or the comment, really. And with that, thank you for being a continuing member of this Lee Spring Army, and we're going to move on to the next question.
All right, and next up, we have a $50 super chat from John Boyer, who says, my question is, interesting that Starsky recently related that he thinks the Crimean Bridge should stay so that the Russians have a retreat mode. Go Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, Slava Ukraine, and Bravo Zelenskyy.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, and that is a little bit of an interesting point, but still, I think that it would be better, in my opinion. Of course, Starsky is over there, and he's involved in the war a great deal, but in my opinion, I think that was a good jest, and I would honestly suggest knocking out the bridge, because instead of allowing the Russians a route of retreat, we ought to make it as difficult as possible to force them into surrendering. If that was possible, oh man, are you talking about one of the largest military upsets that would have ever occurred in modern history? And so I actually still advocate for that bridge being destroyed if they ever get the ability. But with that being said, Slava Ukraini, and thank you so much once again for the support, and thank you for the support to our channel. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question, but thank you once again, John, for being a huge supporter of this channel, and also being a member of this Leaf Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And next up, looks like we had a momentary outage there for a moment, but I didn't even notice it.
It didn't even register on our ends. YouTube saying that we're good to go, and it looks like OBS is saying that too. So if they were trying, they didn't even make it that time at all. So with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Michael Christensen, and he does not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Michael, for your support. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from William Allen, who says, in regards to my question on the Turkey S-400 last night, I was wrong. I misread a State Department document released yesterday. My bad.
It's fine, man. It's no big deal. You know, everyone, of course, misreads everything every once in a while, and I'm one of those people as well who has misread stuff. And so don't take it as a big deal. Don't beat yourself over the head over it. It's just a minor mistake, and everyone makes mistakes. As long as you learn from it and are willing to accept that it was a mistake, that's all that anyone can do, and just learn from it and move on. And I thank you very much for the support once again, and don't worry about it at all, man. Like sometimes, just in case if I did sound a little miffed, sometimes I sound a little miffed, but honestly, I'm not at all. Everyone makes mistakes, and I can't beat people over the head when I make mistakes as well. Everyone's not perfect. But with that, I hope that does address the question, and I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have a super chat from BC Skyman, who puts in a $20 donation, and he left a super sticker. Let's see. He left a cat waving a #1 flag, wearing some kind of thing. I'm not sure what that is, but
it's a samurai outfit.
Oh, okay, that's what that is. Is that a cat or a dog?
It looks like a... Oh, man, that's tough. It might be a Shiba
It's a creature. Inu. It's just a creature.
Oh, wait a minute. It looks like we may have had a little drop-off there. Nope, it shows that it's doing fine on OBS. So I don't know what OBS is talking about, but I like the little... Man, VC Skyman, I like your taste there. The little samurai dog. We'll also... just in case people don't know. Now, I'm not a big fan of samurai. honestly. You know, like the actual myths that surrounded the samurai. And it looks like a lot of them are falling apart these days, like how strong a katana is, which isn't really strong. But still, you have to give the Japanese credit. That samurai armor is some of the coolest looking armor there is in the world. I think that's almost an irrefutable fact. And I'm blown away with how cool this looks. Sadly, it doesn't really compare much to firearms, of course. That's why you saw the Europeans also ditch armor once firearms became commonplace. But still, very cool nonetheless. And that kind of looks like a Shiba Inu. And just in case y'all don't know, that's a kind of Japanese dog. It's actually been recognized in Japan as a like nationally protected animal, I believe. But they're pretty cool. And you'll also may remember these if you are a millennial, which makes up a decent amount of our viewers analytically. Y'all may remember this as the one and only Doge. This is a Shiba Inu. And if y'all know this meme, you know what I'm talking about. You can see that it started to evolve a great deal. You even have like the jacked up Shiba, well, the Doges. Like the Doge has become a very popular thing. There's even a loaf Doge. I'm honestly a big fan of this dog. I think it looks really cool. But sadly, that picture was taken many years ago, and that is the Doge dog as of years ago. And I think the Doge has died, sadly. But it was a great meme. Love the dog. Really cool dog. But with that, I thank you once again for the support, BC. Hope that does address the super sticker. I know we weren't supposed to cover it that much, but really cool super sticker. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $50 donation from William Allen once again, who says, Montgomery screwed us in the invasion of Sicily. Go for the kill. Trap the Russians, exterminate them.
Well, thank you very much for the support, William. And I would have to agree that Montgomery has screwed us, both in Alabama and in Sicily in World War II. Sorry, I had to throw that joke out there. If you're from Alabama, you know that Montgomery's like a very bad place now, and it's been going downhill for years. But yes, Montgomery did make many mistakes. I would have to say that Montgomery's career as a general in World War II was generally tarnished beyond his tenure as the general of the British African forces during the battles of North Africa. I would think that's the only moment he had a spot in the sun, and I think that's the only moment he did well, because we could see the Operation Market Garden, which generally had his oversight and approval, was a complete disaster. Once it was nearing the end. Of course, they had captured all of their objectives except for the Arnhem Bridge, and then the airborne soldiers that had been defending that city well beyond what they were supposed to have defended it for died with no support. It was literally the exact same thing that happened to the VDV at Hostomel, and we consider that a terrible failure. And so in that regard, in General Montgomery's instance, I would also have to deem that a terrible failure. So with that, I hope that does address the comment in a way, and I would agree that the Ukrainians should make sure to try and encircle as many Russians as possible and capture them, because regardless whether you actually kill or capture them, as long as those soldiers are taken out of the fight, that's all that really matters. And so with that, I hope that does address it, and thank you once again for the support, William. You've been helping out this channel a great deal. And with that, we are on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $20 super chat from Tito McLovin, who says, is the Danube being used as a supply route? It should be used to supply Ukraine with weapons and export grain from Vilkov and Kilia straight to Rotterdam in the North Sea via the Rhine, Main, Danube Canal through the safety of NATO countries.
That's a very good point. The Danube does travel through most of Europe, actually, all the way out to Germany, I believe, if I can find it. There's the Rhine, but where's the Danube? Somewhere in here. That's not the Danube. We'll just pull up a map of the Danube River and make it very short and simple. The Danube River. It's a river in Europe. Just in case you didn't know, Google will tell you it's a river in Europe. So let's see if we can... Oh, well, it won't outline it on the normal Google Maps. Let's just pull up an image of it and see where it goes. So you can see that the Danube River has its source just north of Switzerland. And so if we go to that point on the map, I think we should be able to find it. It starts somewhere near Tuttlingen. I believe we can actually see it. Yeah, right here. Here's the Danube River. So you can actually see that it pretty much travels the entirety of the length of Europe. And I believe the canal may lead to the Rhine. And if it does, there's pretty much a waterway connection.
We had another one.
Another
can you hear
one?
Me, Forster?
Yes, I can. I can hear
yes.
you. And we've had been
went
throttled.
Completely black there for a minute.
All right, I want to show you all this. We were just throttled. It was down at 0 there, and I hope y'all did see that. That's the telltale signs that we just suffered our 5th or 6th DDoS attack of the night and have survived. The bots are seething. I can't believe it. We've had as many DDoS attacks tonight as we had during day 116, and we've managed to make it through all of them tonight without a single problem. And so we did it again. I can't believe it. But yes, I do see what you're saying, and I do believe that the Danube, as long as it isn't being over-trafficked, which it may become if they try and ship all the grain through one single route, I do think that it is a viable solution to trying to get that grain out of Ukraine and through the rest of the world, pretty much. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment, and I thank you so much for the support once again. I can see everyone in the chat, of course, relishing in the victory with me, and I almost feel like we should have a military parade at this point for all the successes we've had here. But with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $10 super chat from Spam Hoffen, who says, Panzerhaubitzt, Panzerhaubitzt, Panzerhaubitzt. I love how you say Panzerhaubitzt. It sounds like Panzerhaubitz.
Panzerhaubitz? I think it's just Panzerhaubitz, man. I'm sorry if I'm butchering it. I know that German words are so incredibly long and difficult to pronounce, but once again, I feel like the Germans shouldn't be giving me too much smoke because they can't pronounce squirrel. So with that, that's all, of course, in good jest as well. Just want everyone to know. But I do thank you very much for the support, and if that is bothering you, I'm sorry, but there's not really much I can do. But with that, we're going to move on to the next question, and thank you once again for the support.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Pete Hone, who says, I've seen videos saying F-35 have been spotted flying around the Ukraine. Have you seen anything about that?
No, I have not. That's a great question, and we are actually going to be addressing a live chat that I highlighted to have answered earlier on before the stream even started, but I have not heard about that, and I don't know how people would be getting proof of that, and we'll actually go over that now. The other live chat, which we will still be covering later on tonight, actually said something about the F-35s had their transponders off and flew near Snake Island. But the problem with that, in my mind, is that the F-35s are stealth. There's no way to pick them up on radar, and the only way to detect where they actually are is if their transponders are on. And so if they turn off their transponders, there's absolutely no way to confirm that an F-35 was anywhere, for that matter, because there's no way to show that on a radar or through the transponder being picked up through a passive radar. So there's no way to actually know that there was an F-35 anywhere in the area unless if the U.S. Air Force was to come out and say, we flew F-35s here, which I feel is somewhat unlikely, just for the sole fact that if they did that, that could be an escalatory action against the Russians, and it could push the U.S. closer to war, which we've been largely seeing the United States trying to avoid. So in that aspect, I haven't heard the news, and I feel like it would be highly unlikely if that actually did happen, although it could have, and I may just be out of the loop in that term of news. But with that, I hope that does answer the question, and I thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a super chat from Bella Scythe, who puts in a $100,000 IDR donation and does not leave a comment.
What is
IDR?
Thank you very much, Bella. IDR
I don't know.
Currency. What is this? I want to figure out what it is. It is an Indonesian rupiah. Oh, that's cool. You're from Indonesia. That is really cool. Just for those of y'all who do not know where Indonesia is the country down here. It actually spans multiple islands. I was trying to figure out how to describe this right there. But this is Indonesia, right up here with, oh man, I think that's Malaysia right here. And then there's Brunei, which is a pretty small country right here. But Indonesia is really cool. One of their largest cities is Jakarta, which back in the day used to be a famous tourist spot for well-to-do people all around the world. I'm not sure if it is so these days. I still think it is for the British, but I do remember a lot of advertisements back in the day of the British Overseas Air Corps and KLM having flights that went to Jakarta. But I hope that does address that one a little bit, because that's really cool. You're from Indonesia. That is really, really neat. And so with that, we're on to the next question. And I thank you so much for the support and so much for being a Lee Spring Army member all the way from Indonesia. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Mr. Lunchtime, who says, without getting into U.S. politics, if a certain person returns to the White House, we're going to have to pass on that one, Mr. Lunchtime, because that gets actually pretty political right there. But we do appreciate the support nonetheless. And Enforcer, I'm not sure if you want to say anything about it or not.
Sadly, we don't really want to weigh in too much on politics here. I struck at both sides a few days ago about infrastructure and how much we're spending and stuff. But by and large, I don't want to make a partisan attack on a single party, regardless of what it is or anything like that. But I do thank you very much for the support. But sadly, we're going to have to skip on that question. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from William Allen, who says, time to reflag Ukrainian vessels carrying crops with U.S. flags. We did it with Kuwaiti tankers with earnest will in 1987. See Short of War, published by U.S. Air Force Historical Research Agency. Awesome ops.
Well, thank you so much for the support, and that is a pretty good idea, and I think that it would be fairly easy for international ships to just fly the American flag, because flying the American flag is almost a guarantee of safety, especially on the seas. That's one thing that the Somali pirates learned early on when they were actually in their height, is that if you wanted to mess with any country's ships, you never really wanted to mess with American ones, because it wouldn't end well. The United States has the policy of not negotiating with terrorists, and so they would pretend like they were negotiating until they could murder him. Well, not really murder him, until they could kill him, and then it would just not really end well for the pirates. So in that regard, speaking about that internationally, they also did that at Kuwait as well to protect the tankers there, and I think that they could do that as well once the ships are able to make their way into Ukrainian ports like Odessa and Mykolaiv. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, and I thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Russell Rikus, who says, that's why I only watch the news on PBS. No pontificating, just facts, so you can decide for yourself.
I thank you very much for the support. Sadly, I don't watch a lot of PBS news. PBS, of course, is the public broadcasting system, I believe is what it stands for. Is that correct, Matthew?
Yes, I believe so. And I actually saw a viewer a minute ago say that PBS isn't funded by the government. And I think PBS gets over 15% of their funding from the government. So it is partially funded by the federal government.
Let's see. PBS, Public Broadcasting Service, which I was very close, is a private, non-profit American corporation whose members are the public television stations of the United States and its unincorporated territories. So PBS funding. Let's see where they get their funding from, and we'll see if they're supposedly non-biased or not. While the majority is from donations and contributions, upwards of 15% of its money comes from the federal government, roughly 0.012% of the federal budget via Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And so, according to this, 15% of their support comes from the federal government, which is a substantial portion, but beyond that, it seems that it largely comes from donations and contributions from the public, which is actually insane, because that's pretty much what we do here, but we actually get around 30% from the federal government. I'm just kidding, we don't get anything from the federal government, but we, of course, run off of donations and goodwill from our viewers as well, so it looks like PBS and me are kind of in the same category. And so to pick up on a thing that PBS does, I want to thank all of you for keeping this channel running. And so with that, I hope that does address that in a way, and that is actually a very interesting thing to look into. And I'll have to look into PBS a little bit more, and just in case y'all didn't know, interesting story about PBS, Mr. Rogers, if y'all remember him from your childhood, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, which I was a huge fan of when I was a kid. I still remember the little red trolley moving around on the tracks and stuff. But Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood actually saved PBS from being defunded by the government in the 60s. I believe it was actually the 70s. He actually got up there in front of a congressional hearing, and the congressional hearing was about to decide that PBS needed to have its funding cut because it was worthless and wasting taxpayer dollars. And he came up there, and of course, in the Mr. Rogers way, just did his Mr. Rogers thing, which he pretty much was who he was on camera and off camera, and he charmed the congressional hearing so well that they actually decided to give PBS even more funding. So instead of cutting their funding, they got more funding just thanks to Mr. Rogers alone. And of course, Mr. Rogers was an incredible guy. He was pretty much the friendly American neighborhood guy to everyone around the country. And sadly, he died of, I believe, liver cancer in 2002. But he was an incredibly good person. I still think his show stands up to this day. But with that, we're going to move on to the next question. But I hope that was an interesting little tidbit to everyone about PBS and also Mr. Rogers as well.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Captain Blackjack Honor, who says, do you think the Ukrainians will try to get harpoons on Snake Island to extend their area of denial?
They might, but that's going to take a lot of investment of technology and time on their part. They hardly have a navy to bring anything out there with in the start. They could be destroyed on the way, and then on top of that, if they put harpoons out there, they would also have to invest heavily in trying to have anti-air air defense systems installed there as well to protect the harpoons. And so while it would be nice to do that, and I do believe it would give them an additional advantage and an additional range of some, oh, come on, ruler, some additional 25 miles, I'm not really sure if that would be worth the potential loss that could be incurred if that equipment was destroyed on the way there. So with that, I hope that does answer the question, and I thank you very much for the support, but I don't really think that would be advantageous for the Ukrainians because it seems to be risky. But then again, that's just my opinion. But with that, we're going to move on to the next question, and I thank you very much once again for the support.
All right, and up next we have another $10 super chat from William Allen, who says, Enforcer Matt, by the way, my Aggie mug is not lonely anymore. I got my Enforcer mug the other day. One gets coffee and one gets turkey and tonic. Whoop!
Well, thank you so much for the support, and I hope you are enjoying the mug. I know that a lot of people have been buying our merch, and I hope that all of it's come in. It looks really good, and then you're getting a lot of use out of it. I actually got some merch for my friends because I offered it to them, and of course they're my reenacting group, and so they've pretty much seen me go from the channel being a gaming channel around Christmas time to now I'm a current events channel like I wanted it to be from the very start, and doing fairly well at it. And so I wanted to get them something because of course they're all my friends, and so I got them some Enforcer t-shirts, just being honest. But I hope you have enjoyed the mug because we always try and put the maximum amount of effort into making sure that our designs look good, they look classy, and people would actually be prideful and enjoy wearing them and using them. And so with that, thank you once again for the support. And I hope you enjoyed that turkey and tonic, considering that Turkey just brought Sweden and Finland into NATO. And with that, we are on to the next question, and I thank you so much once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Santiago Flores, who says, this is for pizza, spam, and coffee. Good work, guys, keeping us informed every night so I don't burn out on the war news, which is so much going on. Thanks.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, and that is one thing that I always try and do my best is to make sure that the news is palatable and something that people can listen to. There's a lot of people out there who always cover the war regardless of the news with this doom and gloom and this atmosphere of impending dread, and it makes it unwatchable because it just stresses you out and brings you into a low every single day, and so it's just hard to watch that normally, because who wants to be in doom and gloom every day? So I always try and make sure that when we have sad points to cover on the news, that's sad, but I always try and make sure that I keep a happy, upbeat tone, so that way the news is digestible to everyone, because I wouldn't want everyone to not enjoy listening to the news. So I thank you once again for the support. I'm glad you do enjoy our channel, and I try and make sure to do my best to impress everyone here and make sure that y'all all do enjoy that news. I also see that BC Skyman's getting off for the night, and so good night, BC. Hope you sleep well, and thank you so much for the little samurai doge. That was a really cool little thing. But with that, I hope I haven't addressed the question, and with that, we're going to move on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Diffuse56, who says, thanks for your incredible efforts to bring the facts to the viewers. Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much for enjoying the efforts we go through. I try my best. Sometimes we do fall a little short and we report something a little bit incorrect, but I always make sure to try and correct it on stream as fast as possible. But I do thank everyone so much for enjoying the news we deliver, and I hope that we are able to continue on, not just on Ukraine, but on other things. And just to let y'all in on a little secret, we are looking at, if you've ever watched Vox or Let me think. I'm trying to think of other channels. If you've really watched anyone with infographics where the animation kind of like moves around the map and it tilts and it zooms and all that stuff, we are working on that right now. We're trying to figure out how to do that on our videos because I want to make sure that they're well polished and something that is very beautiful to see. So with that, we're going to move on to the next question, and I thank you so much once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Redwood Beard, who says, "Screw it. Here's more coffee money."
Well, thank you so much. And we will make sure to have lots of coffee. I drink exclusively Busy Cold Brew. Hopefully I can get a sponsorship with them in the future on the videos. But we drink nothing but cold brew now. I've moved off the pike roast straight into the cold brew. It was almost unbearable to drink at the start, but now I've gotten an acquired taste for it, and it doesn't really bother me too much. Honestly, now it tastes like water. But it keeps me up really well, and I thank you so much for giving us more coffee money, because the busy is what is keeping us busy. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment, and I thank you once again for supporting our coffee fund. And with that, we are on to the next question.
And up next, we have yet another super chat from William Allen, who says, "I warned you, don't challenge the cyber guys. Bad guys get, they are just trying to find a way in, LOL."
Well, I thank you very much for the support, William. But honestly, man, I'm challenging all of them, man. They nothing but weak people. I'm the best there ever was. We defending this thing. We're holding that world title, and I just challenge all of them to come up here and try and mess with me. I'm gonna pull them out. I'm losing the voice. Hang on. I'm gonna pull them out into the street. I'm gonna bust their nuts, and it's gonna be nothing. I'm gonna kill them. But it looks like they've tried to, like, being in all serious and moving off the Mike Tyson voice, which I saw a lot of people liked the last time I did it, so I did it again. We've had 6 of them, or 7 of them so far tonight, and they haven't succeeded yet. And so I know what you're saying. It's never good to challenge anyone. It's never good to say that something's insinkable or impregnable. But I'm telling you, so far tonight, we've been on a winning streak with our undefeated champions, and we're going to keep on winning. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. Hope that does answer the question. And let's put up a poll, Matthew. Let's ask people, do I do the Mike Tyson impersonation well, yes or no? I would like to know if people actually do find that to be a very similar impression to what Mike Tyson actually sounds like. But with that, we're going to move on to the next one. And I thank you so much for the support, William.
Enforcer, are you talking out of turn?
Hey, listen, man. I don't let women talk to me off. I can't even say that on stream. That was rough. With that, we're gonna...
I was surprised you were going to go into it. I was like, whoa, he's going into it.
Yeah, and then I was like, oh, no, I can't do that one. Y'all can pull that one up, though. That one was wild. But with that, we're on to the next question.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 donation from LG, who does not leave a comment. Thank you very much, LG. We appreciate you very much. And up next, let's see here. This poll is clogging my screen. Just a moment here. We have an $8 donation from Olivia McCarthy, who says, "If Russia thinks it's okay to just annex former states that used to belong to them, then let's call Kaliningrad what it should be then, Königsberg."
Thank God. You know, honestly, I'm going to be honest with all of y'all. I kept on forgetting the name of what Kaliningrad used to be, which is Königsberg. And I just kept on forgetting it. And so I would come over here to East Prussia, and I would say, you know, Kaliningrad. And then I would think, I don't know, I forgot the name of the town. And then I'd be like, it's East Prussia. And thank you so much, man, because that's the first time I've ever actually heard anyone say the actual name of the town, which is Königsberg. And I thank you so much for the support. And I do agree with you. We should start renaming Kaliningrad Königsberg again. And with that, I hope that does address the question. And thank you so much for finally reminding me what the name of Kaliningrad used to be, which is Königsberg. And so with that, we're on to the next question. And I thank you once again for the support. And actually, I'm really surprised by that poll.
Yes, I am too, actually. I'm trying to check it here real quick. It looks like 66% of the people said, yes, you do a great Mike Tyson impersonation. I just saw somebody in the live chat say to me, was that a Snoop impression? No, it was not. It was supposed to be Mike Tyson, but apparently it wasn't very good. So, no, I was supposed to be Mike Tyson. If you've ever seen his clips before, you know exactly which one I was referencing. It was sort of quite a memorable one, and Enforcer was about to go into it. Luckily, he didn't.
So just to summarize that one a little bit without going too in depth, a woman reporter had asked him a question. And he asked her if she had talked out of turn, and then he said, "I don't interview women unless if I do something with them, and so you better be quiet before we do that. And it was wild, honestly. It was insane. I was about to do it, but I was like, oh no. I was like, that was a little bit too way off kilter to actually say that. But I thank you so much for the support, man. It really helps me out. I mean, like, I always grew up thinking Muhammad Ali was the best, and now I'm up here and I'm the best. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support, and we're gonna move on to the next question. It's a fight, man.
And next up, we have a $5 super chat from from Devin Betterton. And thank you very much, Devin, for your support. We appreciate it very much, as always. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Zach Jeffers, one of our Discord people, who says, F the bots. They can't take down the truth. Ukraine, Ukraine.
And I thank you so much for the support. And I do agree that Kaliningrad is Königsberg, and we should start calling it that. So from now on the stream, I'm going to call this East Prussia, and I'm also going to call Kaliningrad Königsberg. So with that, I hope that does address the comment, and I thank you so much for the support once again. And also, Slava Ukraini, and Slava the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the next question. Now, how many do we have left, Matthew?
Let's see. We have about, about 8 left.
All right, and with that, we were on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Merwin, who says, Slava Ukraine, but stop with that impression, shocked face.
Oh, come on now. I think it's pretty good, and a lot of the viewers agree. The numbers are going down now. It's now around 60 and 40, 62 and 38 actually. But I mean, like, it's pretty decent, But if everyone doesn't like it, I'll probably stop doing it. But with that, thank you very much for the support, and we're on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Scott2412S, who says, when the Ukrainian troops withdraw from their defensive position, do they mark GPS? When the Russian troops advance, shell the hell out of them.
They may. I don't know about Ukrainian tactics that in depth to be able to explain if that's something they're doing or not, but I wouldn't doubt it that a Ukrainian unit somewhere has done something like that. But don't like put your eggs in one basket or quote me on that or anything, because I may be wrong with that statement. That's something that's a little bit too technical for me to answer, and so unfortunately I'm going to have to declare ignorance on that one. But I do thank you so much for the support, and with that, we're on to the next question.
All right, and up next, we have a $17 donation from Mark, who says, Slava Ukraine, keep up the impressions.
And I thank you so much for the support, and now we got people supporting the impressions. And so, thank you very much, man. It's the best thing you could ever do for me, and we're going to keep them up. It's the best of the best with this world champions, and I'm gonna challenge Lennox Lewis to a fight. I'm gonna get my pigeons, and I'm gonna make them kiss, and I'm gonna feed them Fiji water. And so with that, we're on to the next question. And just for everyone to know, just in case if Mike Tyson is watching, I actually respect Mike Tyson, one of the best in the ring. But still, there was a man, I forgot his name. Oh God, I forgot his name. He was fighting in the ring right after World War I. He was the champion of the world. I mean, like, he was killing everyone. But I can't remember his freaking name. I remember Mike Tyson had a lot of respect for him too. But that guy, if you ever watch fights from the early 1900s, people stayed in that ring and they got beat senseless. There was no such thing as going back to your corner or anything. They would literally just hawk over him until they got back up, and they would beat him back down, and the fights would just keep on going. But I hope that does address I'm forgetting the word for it. I thank you very much for the support. I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Sea Dog Pirate, who says, GSC Game World is a Ukrainian game development company. You should get their RTS games, Cossacks and American Conquest.
I have gotten Cossacks, but to be honest, I wasn't really a big fan of that game. I felt like the combat mechanics were a little too clunky for my taste. You kind of just got giant hordes of men and threw them at each other. And, that's, of course, in some people's tastes, but not necessarily mine. I'm more of a person who likes Napoleon Total War, which is the only Total War game I actually really got in love with. And that's where you can actually control units separately and have a lot more control over them. Really, though, I'm really more into the games like Napoleon Scourge of War. I've always wanted to get it. It works around the actual numbers that were involved in Quatre Bras and Waterloo. But sadly, I've just never brought myself to get it, but it looks incredibly cool. So with that, I hope that does answer the question, and I thank you very much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Junebug without the 72 at the end, and a $5 donation from Smoke. So thank you very much to both of you for your support, and thank you very much for watching. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Khan Azor, who says, "The lot of video directed by Michael Bay is more believable than anything the TikTok Battalion ever posts."
That's giving a lot of credit to Michael Bay, and so I thank you very much for the support, and I can entirely back up that comment right there. Not really a big fan of Michael Bay's style of just massive explosions until you're blinded by the light. Neither am I a fan of Quentin Tarantino's shoot them from straight in front of them and attach a whole bunch of rigging to the actor who gets shot and then just yank them off screen to the left or right. I know that's for some people, just not for me, but I do thank you very much for the support, and I can agree with that 100%. And so with that, we are on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $50 super chat from Yoli H, who throws in a super sticker of somebody throwing something around in a circle. I'm not sure what that is. It's some kind of creature, but it's being thrown around in a circle. Is it a lemon?
Yeah, it's like a lemon, and it's like throwing a pea around a circle.
Yes, but anyways.
No, it's a lime.
Cool
That's
there.
a lime.
A lime?
Yeah, it's a lime because it's got a little leaf on it. That can't be a pea. That's a lime.
Huh. That's pretty cool, but thank you very much for your support, Yoli. I'm not sure if that's for the Mike Tyson impersonation or what, but thank you very much for your support.
And with that, I thank you so much for the support, Yoli, and I thank you very much for the lemon lime. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one, but thank you once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from John A. Underwood, who says, "Please explain the colors of the Ukrainian forces. Are the yellow Ukrainian army and the green territorial defense, or what?"
There's really no rhyme or reason to the color of the armbands. As long as it's green or yellow right now, it seems to be what's going and in vogue. At the start of the war, they were another color. I think they were yellow at the start of the war. And then they were blue for a bit, and then they went green, and then it looks like they may be going back to yellow. But as long as it's one of those colors, they're Ukrainians. That's all I know. It doesn't really seem like there's a rhyme or reason to it. But with that, I hope that does kind of answer the question, at least as far as I know. There may actually be an identifier between the markers and what colors mean what. But as far as I know, it's just kind of them changing the colors out every once in a while. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next question, and I thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $5 super chat from BSG Wolf, who says, 82nd Airborne Division uses the same British howitzer too. I've personally fired one just like it.
And I thank you so much for the support. Glad to hear that you have some experience in the British Army. And also, one thing that I was looking at today is that I've gotten incredibly interested in the Horse Guards unit in London. Now, if I could ever go back to London, one thing I would love to do is stay near the Horse Guards parade grounds, which is near Whitehall. Which is, well, yeah, the Horse Guards parade ground right here, which is part of Whitehall Palace, which was deconstructed a large amount in the after the English Civil War. This actually used to be an entire palace. Now it's just kind of one single building and then the banqueting house across the street. But I wish I could go over there and spend a day with the Horse Guards unit, because I was watching them today, got massive respect for them. A lot of them have been thrown off their horses by one thing or another. Of course, it's not them abusing the horses or anything like that, regardless of what people make you think. It's just that sometimes horses get spooked, throw their riders off, and sometimes they get hurt. And it looks like they get hurt kind of bad, and I've got a lot of respect for them for doing that, especially in the modern world with how busy and hectic London is. I have been over there, and the street, Whitehall itself, is a very busy street, and it leads straight up to Trafalgar Square. And oh my god, that's like one of the busiest places in London, and somehow those horses are so well trained that they don't freak out constantly off of all of those moving buses and just the noise of it all. But with that, I thank you so much for the support. And it is really cool to hear that you have fired one of those guns, and I thank you so much for sharing that with us, because I think that's a really cool little story, and I hope that you think back fondly on your experience in the British Army. And with that, we're on to the next question. Thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Tito McLovin, who says, Enforcer, if you are really from Alabama and a boxing fan, you should be hyping Deontay Wilder, Tuscaloosa's son. And I have to say, Tito, I'm not sure if the Enforcer knows who that is, but I'm personally not a fan of him. He kind of has a bad attitude, in my opinion. I mean, Mike Tyson has done some bad things in his day, but he's kind of like come around in his attitude a little bit. This Deontay is not very good attitude, in my opinion.
I do know a little bit about Deontay Wilder, but I'm not really a big fan of him either. He's kind of a loudmouth person. And while loudmouthing is kind of what you do in boxing these days, I feel like he takes it a step too far. And I'm just not honestly a fan of it. Well, in some defenses, I do think that loudmouthing in some ways is really funny, and I think that when you do this kind of stuff, regardless of whether you're intimidating the other side or something, it should be at least entertaining to hear. Like Muhammad Ali always came up with an interesting thing to say that was really interesting and funny to hear. Mike Tyson, while he kind of started to go down the path that you could say that Deontay Wilder's on with the kind of pre-fight talk that he used to do, it still was tame. If you ever listen to him talk before a fight or after it, he would just say something like, I'm the best there ever is, I'm going to win, I'm going to beat the guy. And then when he came back after he bit off Holyfield's ear, Holyfeld's, oh man, I can't pronounce that name. What's that guy's name, Matthew?
Holyfield?
Yeah, Holyfield. I just want to make sure I said it right. After he bit off Holyfield's ear and he got the suspension and came back, he was pretty pissed then, and he was actually in a pretty decent amount of debt and had a lot of troubles going on. And then he started to go down that Deontay Wilder path. But still, I feel like even though it is boxing, the trash talk, if you want to call it that, should be kept to a point that's entertaining and not just obnoxious to hear. But that's just kind of my opinion. So with that, oh, look, it's Mike Tyson's birthday today. Wargo Squad actually says Mike Tyson's birthday. So happy birthday to Mike Tyson. If he's for some reason watching a Ukraine war stream, wish him the best. And with that, we're on to the next question.
All right. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Samulis, who says, let's see here. Enforcer, go into Forex, the actual exchange page, not Google. Dollar is lowest 100 rubles. Their Moscow exchange is fake. And we're going to forego the next part because I think that might be political.
And it is a little bit political. I am reading that. Sadly, we won't be able to cover that. But we will take a look at that, and we'll see the exchange page and take a look at it. We'll, of course, have to just observe it. So there's not really much to comment on there. But I do thank you very much for the support. I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and next up, we have a $5 super chat from Sean Collins, who says, I want some beating bot merch, yes.
And I do agree as well, and I think we're going to try and work on that in the future, and hopefully have something really cool out, so that way everyone can, of course, support the channel, but get some really cool merch out of it that shows us beating the bots, finally. And so with that, we're on to the next question, and thank you so much for the support once again.
Yeah, and I noticed that the Russian Bots Tears mug did extremely well. Everybody loved that one a lot. So it appears to be the bot merch is the way to go. So we'll definitely have to look into making some new designs here soon. So that way we can put those on the store. But up next, we have a $3 super chat from Anthony Stark, who says, what do you think of the new Swedish invisible tank?
Oh, I mean, the Swedish invisible tank. I think you might be talking about that new looking leopard that kind of like showed up somewhere around the world, or the PLO one. I'm not really sure what you're talking about. I think that was the Polish one. Haven't heard a lot about that, honestly. Don't really know much about it. It is just a prototype, and I saw, there's people out there in the world, and I just don't know how people live like this, but it's a prototype tank. I think, as far as I know, if we're talking about the same one, it was a prototype. And so there's only one in the world, and that was the only one that we know is operational. And there was someone in the comment section that said, oh, those greedy Swedes, why haven't they sent 100 of those already? It's like, it's not even in production. How can they send 100 of them? But I think I do know what you're talking about. Don't really have a lot to comment on it. Rather than seeing it, if we're talking about the same one, it looked really cool, but there's not much to talk about beyond that. We have no idea of its actual speed or its capabilities. And with that, we're on to the next question, but I thank you once again for the support.
And it is now time to recognize a few super chats without comments. We have a $3 super chat from Zach Jeffers once more. And then we have a $2 donation from It Takes All Kinds and Kristen Adams as well. And then we have one more. We have a $2 donation from Junebug without the 72 at the end. So once more, thank you very much to all of you for your support. And we are moving on to our next super chat, which is from Little... let's see. I'm not sure if I want to say that. It's a $3 super chat, and he says, thanks for everything.
And I thank you so much for watching the channel, and I hope you have been enjoying it so far, and that we're able to continue to allow you to enjoy this news, and hopefully be a reliable news source for everyone here. And so thank you once again for the support, and with that, we are on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Nurse Sean, who says, can any of the Russian or Ukrainian forces sing? Past wars have produced good anti-recruiting songs, 1860s Arthur McBride, 1970 Alice's Restaurant, etc. A Russian should sing it to be authentic.
Yes, the Russians and the Ukrainians can sing. And have you ever listened to any of the music that came out of the war in Afghanistan that the Russians, well, the Soviets were involved in? I'd actually say the music was a pretty decent quality, really. And we do know that even from the war in Chechnya, there was a pretty decent amount of music that came out of that as well. So in that regard, the Russians do have a pretty good way of making very depressing songs about the wars that they've been in previously. And hopefully they can continue that now, although I feel like that will legally be very difficult for them to do. The Ukrainians, as a country, have come up with bangers, and sadly I haven't been able to play them on the countdown to the stream because most of them are copyrighted, but man, they come up with great songs. And so, to answer that question, yes, both sides, to give even credit to the Russians, make incredible war music, and hopefully we'll be hearing some soon near the end of this war or after it's over, because usually the stuff is just great, at least just hearing it and not really knowing the lyrics on my end. So with that, I hope that does answer the question, and we're moving on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $3 super chat from Jonathan Toe, who says, here's to the UAF strongly encouraging the Ruskies to do many more goodwill gestures.
Could you reread that one real quick?
Yes, Jonathan says, here's to the UAF strongly encouraging the Ruskies to do many more goodwill gestures.
And I thank you so much for the support. Now I know what you're saying. I lost it on the first one, but now I know what you're saying. And I do agree. I think they should have a goodwill gesture of withdrawing from Kherson, giving back Sevastopol, and maybe even ceasing to recognize the Donetsk and Luhansk republics as well. I think those would be very goodwill moves too. And so with that, thank you once again for the support, and also the nice little joke right there. I like that one. And with that, we are on to the next question, and thank you once again for the support.
And next up, we have a $20 super chat from William Allen once again, who says, I love the Diddy Bop Morse code you have, but try doing binary from Cypher, or Cyber. Ones and zeros, and you will find you cyber folks out there, me included. Whoop.
Whoop! And I thank you so much for the support, William. But sadly, I don't know if there's a noise that's associated with the binary. And that's, if it had to be a visual thing of a sequence of ones and O's, that would be a little bit difficult for me to implement onto the stream itself. So I'm going to look into that and see how that works and if it's possible. And if it is possible, I may try and include that. But I do think Morse code is, well, actually binary is pretty heavily associated with war as well. So I might look into it, really. That would actually be a cool one to do as well. And so with that, thank you once again, William. I hope that does answer the question in a way. And I thank you once again for supporting this channel. I think that's about the third time you've given us a super chat tonight, and we're always greatly appreciative. And they just keep on coming in. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next question. And thank you once again for the support.
And next up, we have a $7 donation from Mark, who says, best song I discovered was Operator Starsky. He has 2 songs on YouTube all about defeating orcs, and it's 100.
I do agree. He has some pretty good music, and we have actually played it during the countdown on the stream. And so we are also in the know on Operator Starsky's music. So thank you for sharing that with us. And I'm glad to know that Operator Starsky is growing a fan base of his music. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next question. And I thank you once again for the support.
All right. And next up, we have a $3 donation from She Old the Dark, who says, what news is there of how Russians are treating any female Ukrainian soldiers that they may capture?
We haven't really been getting a lot of specific news on that at all. We don't really get a lot of news on how they're treating any kind of prisoner for that matter. So with that, unfortunately, I'm going to have to declare ignorance on that one because we just don't have enough information to go off of yet. But with that, we're on to the next question. And I thank you once again for the support. I'm sorry I couldn't answer that question.
All right, and up next we have a $2 super chat from Mr. Pete, who says, "Make Kaliningrad Prussia again, MKPA Slava Ukraine."
And I thank you very much for the support. And I can agree that Königsberg should become Prussia again. Well, not Prussia, but part of Germany again. They should get it back. So with that, thank you very much once again for the support. And, you know, every time we ever talk about giving back Germany land, it's like, oh yeah, let's give them back Danzig too. It's like, oh, that's going down a bad route. But I do know what you're saying, and I do thank you very much once again for the support. And so with that, we are on to the next question, and thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Ernesto Perez, who says, "Let's do it, Vansk Enforcer."
And I thank you so much for the support, and let's do it. And so thank you once again for the support. Really enjoy that everyone does like this channel and helps us to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Marc-Andre Burnett, who says, "Here's my $2. Take it."
Well, I will take your $2, and I'll, of course, up you a thank you. And so thank you, of course, for the support, because any amount of support, big or small, helps us to keep running this channel, and we're greatly appreciative to every single one of y'all. Just kind of go through the spiel again, because just like PBS, we're entirely, well, unlike them, they get 15% of their funding from the federal government. We are 100% funded off of the support of our viewers. And so every bit of support helps this channel to keep running, and it's a step in the direction of keeping this channel self-sufficient. Of course, when we move on to videos, we will, of course, take on sponsorships for those, but I always just want to ensure that this channel remains in my original vision, where it remains non-biased on its news and its coverage, and it just covers the facts. Now, I am pro-Ukrainian in stance, but in my assessments of what's going on in Ukraine, I'm always trying to remain non-biased. And so with that, hope that does answer the question, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $2 donation from Junebug without the 72 once more, who says, "Play game Where in the World is Carmen Santiago?"
I know what you're talking about. I thank you very much for the support. I would have to try and get that one on the computer, and that is an ancient game. But I do thank you once again for the support. I hope that does address the question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And for the final super chat of the night, we have a $2 donation from Nurse Sean again, who says, "An anti-recruiting song could do some good now."
It could. I think it really would. And I think, well, not really anti-recruiting, well, yeah, anti-recruiting songs, but just war songs in general. Usually these days, war songs are usually always very demure and sad sounding. I honestly liked it back in the 1800s when they made it sound like a fun camping trip, like there's a girl over here, we go to the bar, we have a little kiss, yay, yay, and then we march along, or something like that. That's how all the marching songs used to be. But now they're always like, I was next to my friend and his eyes were charred out and they were melting out of his sockets. And, I was crying on the ground and choking on blood. And it's like, I understand it. The public sentiments about war have changed, but still at the same time, I wish there was a happy, cheery war song every once in a while where everyone went on like a little hiking trip. Didn't really do much of fighting, but they just had a nice time. Of course, though, the army's never a fun time. But with that, I hope that does address the question. And with that, we are on to the next one, because I see we have one from Krister Peterson, and after that, we're going to answer 3 questions from the live chat, and then we're going to round out the stream for the night.
And yes, the one from Krister Peterson is a donation of, I believe, I hadn't had time to translate it, I think $20. And thank you very much for your support of the channel, Krister, and thank you for sticking with us for such a long time. You're one of our channel regulars and one of our channel legends, so thank you very much for that. And moving on to our live chat questions, many people, or at least not really many, but 1 or 2 have mentioned, where are the live chat questions? They think we're only reading off super chats. That's not true. We always read off live chat questions, and we're going to get to those right now. So the first one up is from Digital Blooddeca, who says, "Can Enforcer talk about Russia's economy that seems to have benefited from the sanctions?"
Russia's economy may have appeared to have benefited from the sanctions on paper, But in real life, the story is entirely different. Their manufacturing industry has entirely shut down due to the sanctions. Roscosmos is not even operating hardly, which is their space organization. The Russian ruble is skyrocketing in value, but there's only a point where a currency raising in value is good, and at the rate it's rising, we can tell that the Russian economy is shrinking drastically, and major deflation has set in. While deflation sounds nice for a currency to become more valuable, if it does that too fast, that's showing that the economy is shrinking. There's less currency in circulation, and that means that there's less economic activity. Inflation can also suggest the same thing of going at too fast of a rate, and so that also suggests that the Russian economy is not doing well. If anyone's telling you that the economic sanctions that have been imposed on Russia is doing good on them, they're lying. Look at North Korea and the amount of sanctions that have been imposed on them around the world, and tell me, even by a roadmap of major roadways that have been developed in South Korea and North Korea, that they're doing well because of sanctions. They're not. And that's the same for Russia. And so anyone who's saying that is trying to spread propaganda and make you feel like the sanctions are pointless, although they are doing more effort, they are doing more to kill off the Russians in their fervor for pursuing this war than the war itself in some ways. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a question from Ukraine F. Putin, who says, what has been the biggest battle of the war in Ukraine?
Oh, the biggest battle of the war in Ukraine, if I had to say, it's kind of tied right now, neck and neck, with Mariupol. Oh, man, there's so many, honestly, when you think about it. There was Kyiv, Kharkiv, Mariupol, and also Severodonetsk, and they're kind of tied, all in my opinion, because while Kyiv and Kharkiv are heavily removed from our minds as of late, they were still massive battles that were heavily significant to the fate of the country. So honestly, if I had to put the significance on a battle rather than just the amount of casualties, I would say the Battle of Kyiv was the most important battle in this war, because it showed that the Ukrainians actually had a standing chance against the Russians and could actually defeat them in an open fight that was just conventionally fought on even terms on both sides. So I would say that the Battle of Kyiv is probably the most important major battle that's happened so far. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question, and we're going to move on to the final question of the night, and then we're going to round out the stream. And so with that, who is the lucky last person you threw in a question?
So the lucky last person of the night is, and I'm just making sure I have the right one here. Let's see. So this one goes to Gabriel Hernandez Photography, and he says, Enforcer, did Soviet Union perform ethnic cleansing in West and Eastern Prussia, Kaliningrad or Königsberg during and after World War II?
Yes, they kind of did. It wasn't necessarily in like a way where they just executed people or killed them, but they would largely uproot them, move them into East Germany, or just kick them out, and then they would move in ethnic Russians, and they started to Russify this area of northern East Prussia. So in that term, yeah, they kind of did some ethnic cleansing, but it wasn't necessarily like a concentration camp kind of cleansing. Unlike what they did to Ukraine during the Holodomor, where they actually starved millions of Ukrainians to death in kind of like a organized famine. So with that, I hope that does answer the question. That did occur to an extent. But then again, that kind of occurred everywhere, just because so many Germans were trying to run from the Soviets. Like in East Germany, if you ever notice, East Germany has never financially recovered, like the Tiger King meme says, never financially recovered from its stint as a Soviet, well, not a Soviet, a communist state. They're still so far economically behind the rest of Germany, which was in West Germany, that a lot of people living in East Germany migrate to the West in search of jobs and better economic opportunities for their family. And so in that regard, I think by and large, if a German lived in a communist state, they're hardly there anymore. Like in Poland, for example, the former parts of Germany, which make up a pretty decent amount of what's modern Poland, there's hardly any Germans living there anymore because they tried to flee through Poland into East Germany and then into the West. So just a large amount of Germans are hardly there at all, really on their own regard and really by coincidence. But that did happen in Kaliningrad. So with that, I hope that does answer the question, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. It has been one hell of a stream. We've gone through 6 DDoS attacks and survived them, and of course, I saw that it was around 62 and 38 of people that liked my impressions versus not, but considering that it was 62%, my defense was impregnable, my offenses were impenetrable, I'm the best heavyweight champion of the world, we're going to keep running these streams until the end of time, and I'm telling you something, but they're never going to take these streams down again, and if they do, I'm going to bust their kneecaps out. And so with that, I thank you all so much for watching once again. It's been a great honor, and I'm going to take a minute to go enjoy my pigeons, and also enjoy some Fiji water. And so with that, thank you all once again, and I will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time for the Day 128 news. So thank you all once again, and I hope you all have a wonderful night. Take care, and I'll see you then.